The story starts where a girl is running for her life, breathing heavy as a pack of goblins stays right on her heels. Laughing the whole time, she loses her footing and screams as she goes tumbling down a steep, rocky cliff. After hitting the bottom, she's trapped in a clearing. The goblins are already closing in while she's just trying to catch her breath. With no choice left, she triggers a physical enhancement spell just as the monsters lunge at her from all sides. Everything goes dark, but later she wakes up in the middle of the woods, covered by a cloak and wondering where she ended up. A guy standing nearby notices her moving and just gives her a casual greeting while she's still on the ground. He sits there by a small campfire he started and asks her if she's finally awake. She panics and sits up way too fast, the cloak sliding right off her shoulder. The sudden movement hits her hard. She winces and holds her arm because of the sharp pain. She groans from the ache, and the guy tells her he knows she doesn't trust him yet, but she really needs to lie back down. The guy mentions that despite her using magic to boost her body, she still took a nasty fall from that height, which leaves her completely stunned. She wonders who this guy even is and how he could possibly know about the secret magic she used. She stays quiet for a second, just lying there under the cloak and processing everything while she finally finds her voice to thank him, telling him she really appreciates the help he gave her. She starts to introduce herself, but he cuts her off and tells her to wait because he feels something coming, and then he looks up, sensing that their pursuers have already caught up. He notes that the massive amount of magic nearby definitely isn't human. The girl starts to freak out, wondering why this is happening now when she's completely out of magic and can't even fight back, making her even more stressed since she still doesn't know if this stranger is actually on her side or not. She stares ahead in a total panic, trying to figure out what her next move should be in this mess. That's when the guy looks back at her totally calm and just asks if he has permission to kill them all. The girl can't believe what she's hearing, asking if he's serious since even the elite guards couldn't kill these things, but he just shrugs it off, asking if that's really how it is, and he gets this wild look in his eyes, telling her whatever and to just leave the whole situation to him while he stands there like a complete badass, repeating that he's got this covered. The girl notices a specific habit of his that seems familiar, and she quietly wonders to herself if he could actually be Sir Ranhart. Just then, a bunch of goblins drop out of the trees and surround them at the campsite with a loud thud, making the whole area crawl with these monsters as they let out creepy high-pitched laughs, closing in on the duo from every side. The guy looks them over and realizes they aren't normal, wondering if there's some kind of chimeras made by an alchemist, and then he says he was going to check if they were actually decent people first, but he figures they probably aren't. The monsters don't wait around and start charging up glowing balls of fire in their hand, and suddenly they launch the magic right at him. He just smirks, finding it funny that they'd even try to use fire magic against someone like him. Fireballs rain down, but the guy stays still while the girl hides behind him. The girl's eyes go wide as she sees the attacks just vanish into thin air. She wonders how a barrier can just cancel magic, while the guy thanks the goblins for the free energy. He gives a cocky smirk and looks at the little fire lizard on his shoulder, his buddy Salamander. The goblins start losing it as a massive heat begins to build up around him. The monsters scramble away in terror while the girl watches everything go down. He calls out to the fire spirit, naming it the Great Vein of the Earth, and the Master of Flames as he finishes the chant, telling this holy messenger to burn the bad guys to a crisp with its fire. Looking up at the massive creature, the girl asks herself if that's really a salamander. It's a legendary fire spirit, a massive, scary force of nature just hovering over the battlefield. The goblins start losing it and screaming as the guy stands his ground, the massive fire spirit towering right behind him, and he doesn't hold back, pointing forward and yelling for Salamander to go out and destroy every last one of them. The legendary spirit lets out a massive blast of flames, incinerating the monsters instantly while they scream in the heat. Everything is burning, but the guy and the girl stay completely safe under the protective glow of the spirit's massive body. The girl just stares at him in total silence, and the guy looks back at her with a casual, confident smirk, like it was no big deal, leaving her completely stunned by what she just saw. She manages to get a thank you out, but he just tells her not to worry about it since they have something else to handle. He moves in closer while she looks up confused, wondering what he's planning to do next until his hand starts to glow with a soft light right in front of her. The girl realizes the pain is totally gone and asks him if he can actually use healing magic too. Lou rubs the back of his head with a chill smile, acting modest and saying he only knows a little bit of magic. He officially introduces himself as Lou Brandel and tells her he's a magician. The girl replies that her name is Francisca Doomer, adding that she's a magician too and that he should just call her Fran. Lou lets out a big laugh and says it's great to meet her, But while they're talking, Fran thinks to herself that she's never heard of anyone named Lou Brandel before. She thanks him again for saving her life back there, then asks what he's actually doing out in the middle of the forest. Lou says he can explain and mentions his grandfather passed away recently, which is why he decided to start a journey. He goes on to tell her that he actually lost his memory 10 years ago in some place far away from here. Lou explains that his grandfather was an Arl who found him and took him in, and as he stares into the fire, Fran realizes he's talking about elves, remembering their long-lived beings who served God and noting they even have one at her school. Lou talks about how his grandfather always taught him that the forest is a place for knowledge and that it's full of all kinds of fairies and beasts that he was supposed to make friends with. Fran looks pretty skeptical and asks if he really means the monsters too, but Lou just shrugs and says yeah, and he reminds her that she actually came falling out of the sky while he was just trying to sleep. Fran admits she totally thought she was going to die back there, apologizing for the mess before asking Lou about his story. She starts opening up, explaining that she's actually a noble from the kingdom of Valentine. Turns out she's the top student at a magic girls' school over in the capital, St. Helena, and was just out for some training when everything went wrong. Those things suddenly jumped them, and the knights protecting her didn't stand a chance. She's safe for now, but she can't stop thinking about the knights who stay behind to fight. So Lou keeps it simple and tells her he'll get her back home to St. Helena, which leaves her looking pretty surprised. Lou gives her a big smile and tells her that since her knights are gone, he'll be the one to protect her now, so she should just leave everything to him. Fran is completely stunned because his words sound exactly like something her hero would say, making her feel a bit guilty for asking for even more help after he already saved her life. Lou just brushes it off though, saying it's fine since he doesn't really have a goal anyway. He tells her that once he drops her off, he's thinking about becoming an adventurer, which really catches Fran off guard. Lou explains that he heard Bartland is the place to be if you want to find other adventurers, so Fran quietens down and confirms the city is real, but she sounds like she's holding something back. She's secretly worried that if he goes through with it, she might never see him again, and Lou can tell she's hesitant, asking what the issue is. Fran looks at him and wonders if he's the kind of person who could actually convince the people she knows, but Lou just keeps talking, mentioning how he heard that magic users are basically the most important members of any adventurer group. Fran suddenly cuts him off and says that's not how it is at all, leaving Lou looking pretty confused. Fran suddenly starts yelling that he definitely can't do that, which catches Lou totally off guard. She tells him there's no way he can be an adventurer, and he just asks her why she's making such a big deal out of it. She gets right in his face and tells him that his talent for magic is actually amazing, but Lou just laughs it off. He says he's just a beginner, and that his grandfather always told him he still had a long way to go, though Fran isn't having it. She grabs him and says he should be a teacher at the girls' magic academy where her mom is the boss. Lou looks at her intense face and starts to get a little worried, just repeating the word teacher back to her, while Fran keeps shouting about how he has to join her school. Lou tries to get her to calm down since she's getting way too hyped up. The scene shifts and Fran's eyes snap open as she starts to realize she fell asleep at some point. Lou sees her stretching and says he's glad she's finally awake. He asks if she's ready for some breakfast, even though it's just some simple food he had on him since they're on the move. Fran kneels on the ground and thanks Lou for the food, and he just gives her a quick nod, but she starts feeling bad, thinking about how pushy and rude she was being to him the day before, while Lou brings up heading back to the spot where she got jumped as soon as they finish eating. Fran agrees, but then she lets out a shocked shout as she realizes what's happening. Lou picks her up and takes off into the sky. She's amazed he can use flight magic, even if being carried like this is a bit embarrassing for her. He just laughs it off and tells her that all Arl travel this way, keeping her tucked close as they fly over the forest. As they move through the clouds, he asks if she was attacked on a main road, and she manages to stammer out a yes, thinking to herself about how only really high-level mages can pull off flight magic. She closes her eyes, enjoying the cool wind on her face, but she suddenly catches herself staring up at him, feeling her own heart start to race. She whispers his name and asks him why his heart is beating so hard against her. Lou looks a little embarrassed and apologizes to Fran, explaining that he's never actually seen a human girl before. He keeps going, telling her she smells nice and is actually pretty cute, which leaves her completely wide-eyed. The two of them fly through the air together, things feeling a little awkward after his sudden compliment. Fran breaks the silence and asks if she can check something with him, so Lou just asks what's on her mind. She asks how old his grandfather is, and Lou mentions that the old man is one of the elders of the Arl. He casually says he thinks the guy is around 7,000 years old, and Fran can barely even repeat the number. She's so shocked. She starts sweating, realizing that the guy who raised him must have lived all the way back in the era of the gods. As they continue through the sky, she asks if his grandfather holds any special title. Lou gives a big smile and says he's the one who manages the entire Arl race, adding that his name is Soul. Fran completely loses it, yelling that he's the boss of the Arlv and she can't believe Lu spent 10 years being trained by someone that legendary. Fran is just staring at him, wondering what kind of guy he really is, while Lu stands there totally clueless about why she's acting weird. They land and see the absolute mess left behind. Dead soldiers are scattered all over the place as monsters run off into the trees. Lu kneels down to check one of the bodies and points out how brutal it was. There was zero mercy, and the remains are in really bad shape. Fran stands there looking pretty shaken by the sight of her friend, but she makes sure to thank Lu for stopping to help them out. Lu looks down with a serious face and admits his first thought was just to grab the items, but seeing this, he knows he can't just leave. He explains that if they leave them, beasts will eat the remains and they'll turn into undead, and since they died for her, they deserve better. Hearing that really gets to Fran. She starts tearing up and kneels on the ground to say a prayer for them. Lu starts a ritual and says that since the souls have already moved on to heaven, he's asking for the power to handle the bodies. A glowing ball of light forms between his hands as he calls out to the earth to guide those lost souls home. He spreads his arms and lets the magic flow, calling out Requiem to finally give the fallen soldiers a proper rest. Lu stands back as the ritual finishes up, and Fran just watches from the ground as the glowing lights start to fade away. He starts rolling up his sleeve and says they need to take the soldiers' relics back with them, while Fran notices a piece of jewelry and asks if it's a bracelet. Lu explains it's actually a bracelet with room magic on it. He says he can fit a huge amount of gear in there, making it perfect for the trip. As they finally approach the massive walled city known as the Valentine capital, St. Helena, Lu looks out at the huge castle and the rows of houses from a distance, realizing they finally made it to the capital. But since he's still carrying Fran through the air, he mentions he can't just drop into the city center like this, so he decides to land a bit further out. While they're moving, Fran looks at him and says she's sorry for what she said yesterday. She feels bad for just throwing the idea of him being a teacher at him, but she follows up by saying his talent is just too great not to be shared with others. Lu looks a bit conflicted and admits he's not sure about the teaching thing. He starts wondering if he'd end up being just like his grandfather. Fran looks at him pretty seriously and says she gets that he wants to wander around freely, but she asks if he'll at least come and listen to what they have to say. Lu agrees to come along, and Fran is pretty shocked he's actually doing it, but he just tells her he wants to hear her story too. They head over to the city's northern gate where a couple of guards are posted at the entrance. One of the guards spots them and completely loses it, yelling out for Milady when he sees her. The guy is worried since she looks like a mess and asks what happened, but Fran just gives him a smile and says thanks as always. She tells the guard she'll give the captain the full story later, then turns to Lu and asks if he'll come back to her mansion with her. The guard quickly agrees to the plan, but then notices Lu standing there and asks who he's supposed to be. Fran gets a bit protective and tells the guy that Lu is her lifesaver, so he better not be rude to him. The guard realizes he should probably back off and says okay, while Lu just watches the whole thing play out. Moving on, the two of them hop into a carriage and start heading through the city streets, and Fran looks over at Lu and asks if she upset him earlier, but he just smiles and tells her it didn't bother him at all. Fran explains that the capital is the kind of place that cares way too much about social status. It turns out they're in Bartland, a country that's famously harsh on any foreigners trying to get in. She tells Lu he definitely needs to come to her mansion, mostly because she needs him to explain everything to her mom. Lu just gives her a big smile and tells her to leave it all to him. They arrive at the Doomer mansion where the head steward, a guy named Zeman, is waiting by the gate. The two of them hop out of the carriage and head inside together. Zeman greets them right away, telling Fran he's just relieved to see she's looking okay. She thanks him and asks if he heard the news from the guard, and he mentions he's already told the lady of the house. But Zeman gets a bit suspicious, saying the madam only gave orders to let her through, then asks who Lu is. Fran is surprised since she told the gate guards about him, but Zeman says he only heard her guards were wiped out. Fran decides she'll just go talk to her mother instead, reminding Zeman that Lu is her savior and the only witness to the attack. But Zeman isn't having it, arguing that they can't let someone who looks so pathetic into the estate. He suggests just tossing Lu some money and sending him away, insisting that even if it's what Fran wants, he won't let a complete stranger like Lu through the gate. Fran starts to lose her cool at the insult, but before she can finish her sentence, a hand reaches out and Lu gently pats her shoulder, looking completely unbothered by the steward's attitude. Fran looks down, feeling terrible and apologizing for how rude the old man is being, but Lu just tells her not to sweat it. This only makes Zeman angrier, and he loses it over the fact that a guy like Lu would even dare to touch the young lady. Lu keeps his cool and tells the steward he's sorry, but then points out that the man's loyalty is totally misplaced. He admits he looks like a mess and gets why someone would be suspicious of him since they've never met, but he reminds Zeman that the only thing that actually matters right now is looking after Fran. Zeman's face twitches and a vein pops out on his head as he asks Lu what he just said, but Lu doesn't back down, calling him out for not telling his mistress about what happened to Fran. He mentions he saw the guy's aura shift when the guards came up, making the steward break into a sweat as he asks what the hell an aura is even supposed to be. Lu just laughs it off and tells the old man that a person's aura is the one thing that never lies. He says he knows Zeman cares about the lady of the house, but if something weird is going on, they're both going to end up in hot water. This sets Zeman off completely. He calls Lu a little brat and clenches his fist, muttering about how hard he's worked to protect Fran. He finally loses it and swings at Lu, yelling at him to watch his mouth, but Lu just leans back and avoids the strike like it's absolutely nothing. The steward keeps charging in, screaming as he tries to land a solid hit on the guy. It doesn't work out for him. Lu just dances around every single punch with total ease. The maids can't believe their eyes as they watch Lu dodge every single one of Zeman's punches. Fran just stands there, completely speechless, while the old man loses his cool, screaming at Lu to stop running and fight like a man. Lu just gives him a relaxed smile and says okay, deciding it's finally time to stop playing around. Zeman lunges forward with a massive punch, but he's left wide open as Lu ducks under the strike and drives a counter hit right into the guy's chest with total precision, ending the fight in a second. Zeman drops to his knees gasping for air. He's totally done as Lu stands over him. The old man mutters to himself about how his tough, trained body got handled so easily by a single blow. Lu looks down at him and explains that he lost because he never even tried to see through the power he was up against. He calls the guy out for faking his anger and holding back the whole time. Lu tells the old man he understands why he did it, realizing the whole act was just Zeman looking out for Fran. Zeman admits the whole situation is pretty embarrassing and just lets out a weak laugh, realizing that while he was planning to land a hit, Lu saw through everything and could have finished him easily. The old man calls out to Fran. She just stands there looking completely worried about him, as Zeman struggles to say he was out of line with their guest and is ready for whatever punishment comes his way. Fran can't help it anymore and runs over to him, screaming his name as he lies there. But Lu tells her to relax and says it's okay, suggesting they should probably get started on healing him up. Just then, someone new walks into the garden and asks what the hell is happening. It's Fran's mother, Adelaide Doomer, and she looks intense as she demands to know why Zeman is on the ground. Fran looks like she's seen a ghost. She tries to explain, but she's so scared she can barely get the words out. Adelaide can feel that Zeman is still alive, but she knows for a fact Fran isn't capable of magic this powerful. Adelaide just stands there with her arms crossed, giving Lu a long, silent look like she's trying to figure him out. Then she suddenly lunges forward, getting right in his face while the maids in the back start panicking, begging her to stop. She stays there, inches away from him, and quietly remarks to herself that he's actually pretty interesting. As she stares him down, she realizes she can't feel even a tiny bit of a threatening vibe coming from him. Yet Fran can't take it anymore and yells at her mom, telling her she's being way too rude to Lu. Adelaide keeps up her mental checklist, noting that while the guy is tall and thin, he clearly moves with a ton of speed, and looking at his black hair and eyes, she figures he's definitely a human, just from some country far to the east. But the more she looks, the more she's thrown off by his power, feeling like his magic goes on forever without any limit. Finally, she breaks the tension with a smirk, telling Lu that he's got a really nice set of eyes. But Lu just stays calm, telling her he needs to heal the steward first since he's the one who put the old guy on the ground. Fran looks pretty worried and tries to jump in, but Adelaide just starts to say something before Lu gets to work, chanting about the power of the earth to heal Zeman, while the old guy lies there struggling. Adelaide completely freezes up when she hears the chant, realizing it's actually spirit magic, something almost no human can pull off. She watches him closely, thinking about how even the Arlv, who are the absolute best at this, can't use it as perfectly as he does. Zeman lets out a rough groan as the healing magic starts flowing through him, and he suddenly sits right up. Adelaide asks how his injury is, and he just looks at her, completely losing it because he can't feel a single bit of pain anymore. The tension finally breaks as Fran tells her mom she has some things to explain, and Adelaide just nods. She gets this look in her eye, telling Fran she wants to hear every single detail about Lu. Later on, the two of them sit down to talk. Adelaide realizes Zeman's report was totally off, and she thinks the whole misunderstanding was just a big waste of time. Adelaide sits in the library, mentioning how she really wants to spend more time on her studies, but Fran just teases her, saying her mom is always hiding out in the laboratory the second she gets bored. Adelaide just laughs it off, admitting that's just who she is, basically a total magic geek. She gets a bit more serious, explaining that any creature that can use magic is just really interesting to her. Lu chimes in, mentioned that he actually picked up some of their corpses when he was grabbing the knight's relic, which really gets Adelaide's attention. Lu asks Fran if it's cool to show them right here, and she nervously tells him to go ahead. Fran wonders if he's keeping them in his bracelet, while Adelaide leans in, practically begging to see them. Fran tries to stay calm, telling herself there's nothing to be scared of since the things are already dead anyway. Adelaide keeps telling herself isn't scary at all, while Fran finds some comfort in the fact that her mom and Lou are right there, but then Lou pulls the corpses out. Adelaide's words get cut short as these creepy, grinning goblins fill the room. Lou and Adelaide are stunned as Fran suddenly collapses. The sight of the goblin corpses is too much for her, and she drops to her knees shaking. She starts spiraling, shouting no over and over while panicking. She's completely lost in a flashback, crying out for the people she's lost. Lou quickly grabs her hands to steady her, telling her she needs to calm down because they're right there with her, but she's still completely out of it. Adelaide rushes over, shouting her daughter's name and telling Lou to let her handle the situation since she's clearly terrified. Fran's voice is tiny as she asks if Lou is still there, looking like she's about to break. Tears are streaming down her face as she begs him not to leave her alone again. She's absolutely desperate, pleading with him to just stay. Lou gently tilts her head up and promises her that he's not going anywhere and he won't leave her alone. He places a hand on her head and leans in, pressing his forehead against hers to cast a remission spell to help her finally settle down. She leans into him, eyes closed as the panic starts to fade away. Adelaide lets out a huge sigh of relief, apologizing to Lou for the mess, but Lou just tells her he's the one who was too careless. Lou stands his ground with a serious look while Fran stays in the back, looking completely drained from the panic attack as Adelaide looks closely at the dead monsters and points out that they look almost exactly like regular goblins, though Lou explains that he thinks they're actually homunculi, artificial beings that someone mixed together with goblin parts and spirits of the dead. Adelaide stares at the creatures, wondering why anyone would ever target Fran like this, but Lou tells her there are actually a ton of reasons. She knows it too, listing off how Fran is a hero's descendant with the Doomer family blood and has way more magic power than most people her age, making her a huge target. Adelaide says having all those gifts makes it pretty easy for other people to get jealous and hold a grudge. Lou just listens, mentioning how pride and fake personalities are basically standard in noble society. Then he goes quiet as Adelaide looks down, feeling the weight of the situation and admitting she thinks Fran only got caught up in this mess because of her. She stops and gives a deep bow, telling Lou Brandel she has to thank him again for everything he did to save her daughter. But then her vibe shifts and she gets a little smirk, saying she'll keep thanking him later. But first, she wants to know exactly what his deal is. Adelaide leans in close with a curious look, asking Lou more about his spirit magic. He just gives a sheepish smile and says he already explained most of it to Fran. The room practically shakes when Adelaide yells out, asking if he can seriously use every single magical element there is. She sits there looking totally drained, mentioning how she's been blessed by great spirits herself, while Lou just casually confirms he can use earth, water, wind, and fire. Adelaide is losing it because most people only ever have 2 elements at most, but Lou just smiles and says his grandfather told him he's only the 4th person in 7,000 years to have them all, even if there used to be more people like him way back. Adelaide looks like her brain is melting from the shock. Lou just stares at her, totally confused about why she's making such a big deal out of it. She puts a hand to her head, looking completely stressed out as she tries to figure out what she's even supposed to do with a guy this powerful. Lou looks away, explaining that his original plan was just to be an adventurer in Valentine so he could finally see what the rest of the world looked like. But then he mentions that Fran actually asked him to come teach at the academy, a detail that catches Adelaide completely off guard. He wonders for a second if it would be better for everyone if he just left, but then he remembers Fran crying and begging him not to go away or leave her alone again. Adelaide finally relaxes on the couch, thanking Lou as she realizes he actually does care about her daughter's happiness. Adelaide looks at Lou with a big smile and tells him his magical talent is actually pretty magnificent. She says it would make her really happy if he joined her academy, promising that he'll be more than welcome there. Lou takes a second to think, saying this is his own journey and he needs to make the choice based on what he actually wants to do. Adelaide gets this goofy look on her face and admits her real plan is to keep him around so he can help her with a ton of different magic experiments. She keeps acting weird while talking about all the things they could do. Lou just repeats the word experiments, looking a bit unsure about the whole thing. He looks down and mentions his grandfather always called him a total beginner, so he wonders if someone like him is even qualified to be a teacher. Adelaide just laughs at that, telling him it's hilarious he'd say something like that when he's as talented as he is. She tells him that he definitely can do it, especially if he just teaches the same way his grandfather taught him. Lou looks pretty surprised when she suggests that taking the job might actually help him find something new for himself. She explains that he carries all this knowledge from the Great Soul, and she really wants him to share those lessons with her student. Lou thinks back to how his grandfather taught him everything, just a hooded figure standing over him when he was a kid, and Adelaide keeps talking, saying she's not sure if he noticed, but she's pretty sure Fran had a different reason for asking him out. Fran is right there with a huge smile, saying they just met early, While Lou thinks to himself that he hasn't seen her look that happy in a long time, Adelaide looks at him with a grin, telling him he doesn't have to give her an answer right away and should really think about it. But Lou speaks up immediately, calling out to her and saying he actually wants to give it a shot. He looks her straight in the eye with a serious expression and asks her to let him become a teacher at the Valentine Magic Girls Academy. Everything fades into a memory of someone calling out Fran's name. Her eyes are closed as she hears the voice again, and she whispers the name Reinhard as she starts to wake up. The memory shows a knight smiling and telling her to be at ease, promising that he will definitely come back for her, telling her to just leave everything to him as the dream fades away into the dark. The sun stays high over the massive estate where everyone is staying, and inside, Adelaide starts explaining how things work at the academy, mentioning that he'll be the only guy on the teaching staff since everyone else is female. She moves right along to the next point, which is figuring out exactly what subjects Lou is going to be in charge of. Adelaide explains that teachers handle their own class while focusing on a specific area, so Lou is going to need his own specialty to teach the student. She points out that the spirit magic he used before is way too rare and hard for most people to actually master, so the school usually sticks to magic formula, which is basically a simplified way to get magic moving. And since she drops a massive stack of books on the table, she tells him he needs to learn all these formulas and asks if he can handle it. Lou just smirks at the books, saying he only needs to see a formula work once to get it, and he can probably do the rest without even chanting. Lou asks how he should actually run his classes, but Adelaide just tells him that every teacher there has their own personal style. She smiles and tells him he'll do great just being himself, especially since he already managed to make Fran feel so relaxed around him. Lou stands there holding his books, looking completely blindsided as he asks if she's really talking about Fran. Adelaide turns back toward him from the bookshelf, asking exactly what he means by that reaction. She stands by the window while Lou takes a seat, and she casually drops the news that she actually had a fiancé lined up for the girl. Adelaide explains that for nobles in this country, you basically marry someone off the second a decent match comes along, and Lou just listens, not saying a word. She goes on to say that 12 years ago, when Fran was only 10, she decided to set things up with the second son of Countess Saru, a guy about 8 years older than Fran. She remembers how he used to visit the estate all the time after the engagement was official, and even though Fran was just a little kid, she really cared about him. Adelaide's face clouds over as she looks down, mentioning that everything changed when a certain fateful day finally arrived. She starts explaining this thing called the Great Destruction, describing it as a random disaster that just hits the world for no apparent reason. It's never the same thing twice. Sometimes it's a crazy storm, and other times it's a massive wave of demons showing up out of nowhere. Lou puts a hand to his chin, thinking it over, and realizes that what people here call the Great Destruction is the same thing the Arlv call God's wrath. Adelaide sips her tea and notices that Lou looks like he's at least heard of the Great Destruction before, and she starts describing how it hit St. Helena 10 years ago, when a massive swarm of wyverns attacked the capital and burned it all down. Back then, Fran's fiancé was serving as a knight in the royal guard, and he was ordered to go out and join the war effort, leaving the girl behind with a promise that he'd protect her and definitely make it back to her alive. He told her he'd take care of whatever happened, looking completely confident about the whole thing. But even though the royal guard eventually managed to drive the wyverns back and save the city, the cost was high. While he was right in the middle of the fight trying to protect his fellow soldier, a wyvern tore him apart, and he was killed in action. Adelaide explains to Lou that losing someone that important really messed with Fran's head and made her mentally fragile. She spent every single day crying back then, and her old cheerful personality just completely faded away as she started burying herself in her magic books, using her studies as the only way to deal with the pain. Adelaide explains that Fran was actually a top student who graduated from a great magic college and had a ton of influence, but for some reason, she insisted on going back to her old school to work as a teacher without ever explaining why. Lately, the vibe in Fran's classroom has turned really dark and gloomy, and because she acts so differently now, she's lost the respect of her students and has a pretty bad reputation around campus. Setting her tea down, Adelaide admits that as a mother, she's just really worried about her daughter's future. She suddenly slams the table, making Lou jump, and tells him that him showing up and saving Fran's life is a big deal. Lou tries to act like it was just luck, but Adelaide leans in laughing and says it's definitely a sign of destiny. She tells him that even if she can't use magic to see the future, her instincts are always right about these things, and she looks Lou right in the face, telling him he's the best visitor ever and a total gift to her daughter and the school. Outside the mansion, The birds fly through a clear sky as Adelaide finally looks like she's at peace with everything. Fran wakes up in her room and sits up in bed, feeling a bit confused about when she actually fell asleep. She suddenly remembers being back at the crime scene with Lou and her mother, and the shock of it all hits her. Panicked about Lou's safety, she throws the blankets off and goes running out of the room until she finds Lou in the dining room, wearing borrowed clothes and asking her if she's feeling alright now. Fran is so stunned to see him looking totally fine that she can't even get a full sentence out. So Adelaide giggles and tells Fran she's glad she's looking better before heading off to get breakfast ready. Fran finally finds her voice and shouts a morning greeting, though she's still just standing there in her nightgown. She grabs her mother's arm and asks what happened last night, while Adelaide just tells her to calm down and explains that everything is handled because Lou is now a substitute teacher at the school. Lou looks just as surprised as Fran is, holding his breakfast plates and asking if that's actually the plan. Lou just gives this really warm smile, and Fran can't help but notice how nice he's being. Fran starts cheering and jumping around, while one of the maids nearby thinks about how hyped up she's getting. Adelaide suggests that the three of them should head over to the school together as soon as they're done with breakfast. She points out that it's actually spring break right now, so she's going to personally give Lou a tour of the place. They arrive at the school, a huge campus with fountains out front. Lou is blown away by how big the building is and mentions how the whole school feels like it's packed with beautiful magic. Adelaide explains the layout, telling them the main building is 5 floors high and that the students usually have class on the 2nd and 3rd level. Moving up to the 4th floor, she shows him where the principal's office and conference rooms are, eventually leading them into a large room. She tells Lou that this staff room is where he'll be set up for his new job. Adelaide stands there looking pretty confident and reminds him that the new semester starts in just 3 days. Adelaide tells Lou she wants him to head into Fran's class to work as a teaching intern, and Fran can't help but feel the nerves hitting her now that she knows she'll actually be working right alongside him. Just then, the door swings open and Adelaide gives a bright morning greeting to the person walking in. It's a woman who seems totally caught off guard to see the chairwoman and the principal at the school on a day off. Adelaide says good morning back to Colette Sensei and points out that she showed up pretty early, while the new teacher, Adeline Colette, stands there just trying to process who the new face in the room is. Adeline asks who Lou is exactly, and Adelaide realizes this is actually the perfect time for everyone to meet. She explains to Adeline that Lou is joining the staff as a teacher this year, then introduces the two of them. Lou flashes a huge smile and tells Adeline it's great to meet her, acting super casual from the jump. Adeline just stands there in total silence, internally losing it because this guy is already using her first name like they've been friends forever. Adelaide notices the tension and asks Adeline what's with the weird greeting, causing the new teacher to jump. Adeline tries to pull herself together, thinking that since first impressions are everything, she has to nail this introduction. She goes for it with a massive bow, but ends up stuttering over every single word of her own name and Lou's. Lou just stands there in silence for a second, watching her stay doubled over in that awkward bow until Adeline starts losing it internally, convinced she's turned the whole meeting into a total disaster by tripping over her tongue. Just then, Lou reaches out and gives her a gentle pat on the head, telling her she really doesn't need to be this nervous. He gives her a confident look and says he can already tell she's a great person just by checking out her aura. And as Adeline looks up at him with wide eyes, Lou flashes another smile and tells her again how nice it is to meet her. She manages to shake his hand and say the feeling is mutual, though she's still clearly a bit dazed by the whole thing. Adeline is left with a weird, happy feeling she can't explain, while Fran stands in the back totally confused by the scene. Lou tells Adeline she isn't just being formal, she's actually being really polite, and Adeline laughs, saying Lou is the one being nice to everyone, but Fran is standing right there giving off a scary vibe. Lou notices Fran looks like a total ghost in the background, which has Adeline completely freaked out by the dark energy Fran is radiating, though Lou just laughs and tells Fran her face looks hilarious like that. He mentions she's actually scaring the new teacher, making Fran gasp as she realizes she was being way too intense. So Lou apologizes for her while Adeline tries to wave it off like it's no big deal. Lou tells Adeline there's really no reason to be afraid of Fran, even though Adeline is still acting pretty shaky about the whole thing, until the group moves up to the 5th floor where Adelaide says she needs to talk to Lou alone for a bit, suggesting Fran go have some tea while Lou agrees that sounds fine. Adelaide starts to use Fran's nickname, but catches herself, using her full name Francisca to show she's dead serious. Adelaide gets straight to the point. She asks Fran if she actually knows why Lou was hired as a substitute teacher, and Fran gets all nervous, guessing it's because his training ends in a year and he'll be an official staff member then. Adelaide just shakes her head no. she's not even close, making Fran look even more confused about the whole situation. Adelaide explains that when Lou left his home with the Arlv, he told everyone he just wanted to see the world, and she thinks they shouldn't just keep him around for their own sake. The guy deserves to be free. She says if the year ends and he wants to go back to traveling, they really need to let him go, making Fran look pretty down as she admits she was just way too excited to have him around. Moving on, Adelaide mentions that Lou has no idea how powerful he is because his old mentor, Saul, always told him he wasn't ready, mostly just to make sure the kid didn't end up being full of himself. But then Adelaide gets really serious. She looks Fran right in the eye and asks what she truly feels for Lou. Adelaide gets blunt. She tells Fran that Reinhardt is gone and asks if she's really just using Lou to fill that void, and it turns out Fran was drawn to Lou because he talks exactly like Reinhardt used to, always saying he'd handle things. But Adelaide doesn't sugarcoat it, saying Lou's kindness is just him being friendly, not because he's actually in love with her. She points out that Fran is also stuck looking for Reinhardt instead of seeing Lou, leaving the girl totally speechless. So they keep walking as Adelaide explains that love doesn't follow logic. But that's not the whole story. She grabs Fran's shoulder and tells her that if she wants this to work, she needs to actually put in the effort to talk to him and let him get to know the real her too, instead of just staying in her own head about it. She reminds Fran that unlike her past, Lou is someone she actually found on her own, so it's up to her to decide what they're going to be, and Fran finally agrees that she'll make a choice. But then Adelaide laughs and says if she still gets rejected after all that, she'll just have to give up, which definitely isn't what Fran wanted to hear. Adelaide admits that Lou's magic is actually incredible and says they really need to keep pushing each other to get better, because that kind of competition is going to be great for both the school and the students in the long run. She reminds Fran that she's the principal now, so she needs to start thinking about things from that perspective, leaving Fran a bit stunned as they walk back into the room where Adelaide apologizes for making Lou wait so long. Lou tells her it's no big deal, but Fran just stands there staring at him like she's trying to see right through him, telling herself she needs to really look at him this time, while Adelaide just smiles, thinking about how naive her daughter is. Adelaide changes the subject and tells Lou that the captain of the Royal Guard is actually heading over this afternoon to interview him about what happened during that attack on Fran. She lets him know they're mostly just going to ask about who he is, so he doesn't have to show off everything he can do, but warns him that the city of St. Helena is pretty strict when it comes to keeping tabs on outsiders. Lou looks over at Adelaide and asks her what exactly she wants him to do, since things are moving pretty fast. Adelaide says she's thinking about making his official title Fran's servant, a suggestion that leaves Fran completely shocked, while Adelaide asks Lou if he'd actually be okay with that. Fran immediately starts yelling at her mom, saying that's a terrible way to treat Lou because being a servant is basically no different from being a slave. But Lou just steps in and tells Fran to relax, saying it's all good and she should just leave the details to him. He tells them he actually agrees with the plan, promising that whether it's one enemy or 10,000, he's going to protect Fran at all costs. Adelaide thinks that's a great mindset to have, while Fran just stands there blushing and totally speechless after hearing him say that. Fran tries to hide her face and tells herself not to get carried away by his words, leaving Lou standing there wondering why she's suddenly acting so weird. Adelaide thanks Lou for being so cool about it, saying that having him work as a temporary teacher while being Fran's bodyguard is a solid plan. She starts to say something else, but cuts herself off the moment she hears a sudden knock at the office door. Someone on the other side greets the chairwoman and says they were told she was looking for them, which means Lou's interview is about to start. Lou repeats the title vice principal as if he's never heard it before, while Fran looks pretty annoyed and lets him know who's at the door. Adelaide recognizes the name Altstera right away, mentioning to the others that she's actually the teacher representing the Arlv. She tells Fran that even though they're busy, this is the only way forward and orders her to open the door. Fran just gives a quiet okay and moves to open the door. She looks a bit tense as she finally sees who's waiting on the other side. The woman entering is Kulturi Eltsvera, the vice principal, who notices the principal is already there and offers a quick apology for the visit. Fran stands there completely frozen. She starts sweating and can barely get a word out as she stares at the woman. She looks at the vice principal and quietly asks if her name is actually Kelly, but before she can get an answer, Lou jumps up with a huge smile on his face, calling out to Kelly and telling her it's been way too long since they last saw each other. The vice principal looks like she's seen a ghost. Her eyes go wide and she asks if he's really Lou, leaving Fran standing there totally confused, trying to figure out how on earth these two even know each other. Fran and Kelly are both completely frozen, looking at Lou, while the whole room feels heavy with one big question about what kind of connection these two have. The three of them just stand there in the middle of the office, the silence stretching out as the reality of the situation starts to sink in. Kelly looks like she's seen a ghost, staring at him with wide eyes and trembling as she asks if it's really him, while Fran finally breaks her silence. She's totally caught off guard and asks if the two of them actually know each other. Lu just gives a casual smile and lets the cat out of the bag, explaining that Kelly is actually a relative of his grandfather, which leaves Adelaide pretty shocked. She asks the vice principal if that's actually true, and why she never said anything, but Kelly just replies it's because nobody ever asked. Adelaide rubs her forehead in frustration, telling Kelly that things would have been way easier if she'd just been upfront instead of keeping secrets from everyone, especially since they've worked together so long. Lu then asks Adelaide if she was the one who recruited Kelly to the academy, and she confirms she was the one who made the call. Adelaide explains that back in the day, Kelly was known as a total genius at the Magic College, and she had to go there personally to talk her into joining the staff. She brags about how Kelly made it to vice principal in only 2 years because of her talent. Kelly looks pretty embarrassed by the praise, but Lu just tells her she's amazing. Kelly looks down all embarrassed and tells the chairman she's totally overestimating her, but Adelaide isn't having it and stands her ground, insisting that everything she said is the absolute truth. Adelaide gets a mischievous look on her face and changes the subject, asking Kelly what the deal is between her and Lu, which completely makes Kelly lose her cool. She starts yelling that they aren't even related and only did some training together, while Lu just stands there laughing his head off. Adelaide keeps the teasing going, asking if it was more of a teacher and student type of vibe, but Kelly just keeps shouting that it was nothing but normal training. Lu pipes up with a huge grin, saying it was actually tons of fun, which just results in Kelly snapping at him to shut his mouth. Fran stands back and watches the two of them go at it. She's never seen this side of the vice principal before, and it's pretty clear she's caught off guard, thinking to herself about how Kelly is usually so stiff and impossible to read, yet here she is showing all this emotion. She notices how Lu seems genuinely happy, and figures the two of them must have a really deep bond to be opening up like this. But then, she starts feeling a little left out, realizing that Kelly probably knows a whole lot more about Lu's past than she ever will. Lu finally settles down and looks Kelly right in the eyes, telling her that he and everyone else were actually really worried about her this whole time. The mood gets serious as Kelly mentions how Lu just vanished into thin air 5 years ago, and she really wants to know what happened. Fran stands there watching the whole exchange, looking pretty worried about where this conversation is heading, while Adelaide chimes in, saying that while they clearly have some history to talk about later, the current situation is actually a win for everyone. She drops a bombshell by suggesting that Lu should officially become Fran's follower, which completely catches Kelly off guard. She lets out a huge shout of surprise while Lu just stands there looking like his usual calm self. Kelly is still visibly shaken by the idea, but Lu just gives her a little smile like it's no big deal at all. Kelly tries to wrap her head around it, stressed out and asking why she even has to be part of this whole plan anyway. So Adelaide explains that her being the vice principal makes the introduction way more official. It's just more persuasive if she's the one to set it up. Kelly keeps pushing back, but Adelaide just teases her about Lu being her cute little training partner and says it really shouldn't be a problem, until she jokingly asks if Kelly is just too incompetent to pull it off, leaving the vice principal looking totally crushed and out of excuses. Kelly finally gives in and says she gets it, while Lu is just being polite and Adelaide decides they're on a first-name basis now. She looks pretty nervous about the whole thing as a hand reaches out and taps her shoulder, then Lu gives her a big friendly smile and thanks her personally for all the help she's giving them. A few hours pass. It's 2:00 p.m. over at the Doomer Mansion when a high-ranking knight named Kieruvan Ryan shows up with his guards looking pretty official in his cape and armor, but he drops the act and gives Adelaide a hug, thanking her for having him over while she welcomes him back. The mood shifts when Kieruvan mentions how today was a total mess. He's still shaken that those creatures actually managed to jump them. Adelaide looks pretty somber and tells him they'll definitely make sure to remember the 5 knights who died, making sure Fran stayed safe. And then she lets him know there's some big news regarding Fran, specifically that there's a guy willing to be her official follower. Kieruvan is totally shocked to hear someone stepped up for the job, so Adelaide tells him to head to the reception room to see for himself. Kieruvan and Adelaide take a seat in the reception room to talk, while his guards stand at attention right behind him. Adelaide looks toward the entrance and tells Fran and Lu to come in, just as the door handle clicks and starts to turn. Lu follows Fran into the room as she gives a polite greeting to Kieruvan and the rest of the group. Fran immediately tells Kieruvan she's sorry he had to come all this way on her account, but he just waves his hands and tells her there's no need to apologize. He gets a serious look and says those knights lived for the sake of protecting what's important, so they can rest easy knowing she's safe. Hearing that makes Fran feel a lot better, and she tells him she's actually pretty relieved to hear him say those words. Kieruvan looks at her and thinks to himself that even though she still looks pretty tired, she's doing way better than before. Lu stays quiet and just watches from the side as the two of them finish their conversation. Then Kieruvan shifts his focus to Lu and starts judging him, thinking the guy looks too thin to be a real fighter or know how to use a weapon. Adelaide breaks the silence and tells Lu it's time to introduce himself, and he just gives a quick nod and agrees to do it. Lu drops down on one knee to show respect to Count Rayan and the knight, telling them his name is Lu Brandel, and that he's currently serving as Fran's follower. He finishes his introduction by saying he's glad to meet them, and Adelaide notices Keruvan acting a bit weird, asking him what's up, but he just brushes it off and says it's nothing. Keruvan gets right to the point and asks them to explain exactly what happened during the incident, so they fill him in on all the details until he finally nods, saying he's got a good handle on the situation now. Adelaide lets him know that while Lu is technically a human orphan, he actually grew up in the Arl village, adding that Kelchuri recommended him to be a temporary teacher at the academy. Keruvan stares Lu down, thinking about how impressive it is for someone to come from a place like the Arl village, and he speaks up and tells Lu to step closer for a minute. Lu agrees to come over, but as soon as he's in reach, Keruvan suddenly reaches out and grabs Lu's arm with a firm grip. Fran jumps up from her seat completely caught off guard, asking Keruvan what he thinks he's doing to Lu. Fran panics for a second, wondering if this is going to turn into another weird situation like the one with Zeman, and she tries to tell Keruvan to stop, but he's already checking out Lu's arm, saying they're spectacular and that he's clearly trained hard despite his slim build. Keruvan asks what kind of special training Lu has been doing to get like that, though Lu just brushes it off as nothing special, while Fran looks on with a pretty skeptical face. Keruvan doesn't drop it though, telling Lu he wants to see him compete against his own young knight. Lu doesn't seem to mind the challenge, saying he's down for it if a good opportunity comes up, so Keruvan gets hyped and starts trying to set a date right then and there, at least until Adelaide yells his name to get him to settle down. She tells him he never changes and asks him to save that talk for another time, while Keruvan just laughs it off as a bad habit. Moving on, Keruvan says he's going to take the evidence and mementos back with him, and Adelaide tells him they'll leave the rest of that to him. As they watch him go, Adelaide looks over at Lu and Fran, noticing how Lu has finally managed to clear the shadows away from Fran's heart. She sees even Zeman looking content with the situation and smiles to herself, thinking about how she really found a great guy for the job. Adelaide looks on, thinking about how Lu's eyes show absolutely no sign of malice despite everything he's seen. He even mourned the people she lost, proving that even if he isn't a knight, he definitely lives by their code. Keruvan notices how much Adelaide trusts the guy and smiles to himself, deciding right then that he's going to keep a close watch on Lu from now on. By the next day, things are finally moving again as someone yells from inside the mansion that they're headed out, and Zeman stops Fran to ask if she needs him to get the carriages ready for her trip, but she just gives him a big smile and says it's totally fine, pointing out that the weather is actually great today and she and Lu are only going as far as the trading firm anyway, which Zeman seems to accept for a second. He gets a serious look on his face and tells Lu that he's leaving Fran in his hand, so Lu gives him a quick salute and promises to take good care of her. But then Zeman leans in way too close, telling Lu he also needs to explain that weird technique he's been using lately. Lu can only laugh nervously while Zeman stares him down, leaving Fran to watch the whole thing, thinking to herself that Zeman is back to being his usual scary, aggressive self again. The sun is out and the town looks great with all the old-style buildings lining the streets as Fran and Lu walk through the crowds together. Fran is loving the view, mentioning how gorgeous everything looks and how much she likes how busy the area is, so she starts talking about her living situation. She mentioned she was worried about where to stay at first, but she's really glad Adelaide gave her the okay for a live-in arrangement because having Lu right there by her side makes her feel a whole lot safer. She gets all hiked up and tells him she's definitely buying him some new clothes today, promising to find some really good ones. But Lu just wants to keep it simple. He tells her he prefers normal clothes since he doesn't think formal stuff really suits him, though Fran just giggles and says those are for her little brother. Their walk gets cut short when some shady guy suddenly leans in way too close to Fran and tells her she's actually pretty cute. Fran is completely caught off guard by the random approach, and the guy doesn't stop there. He suggests she should probably get away from the dude she's with and come hang out with him and his friends instead. Then he reaches for her, while Lu steps in to block the way. The thug gets annoyed and asks Lu what his deal is, telling him to just move aside. But Lu doesn't budge, so the guy loses his cool and swings a punch while telling him to get lost. It doesn't go well for him as Lu catches the fist with one hand like it's nothing. Then Lu starts squeezing, the guy's hand starts crunching, and he begins screaming about how much it hurts, which makes his buddies freak out. They call Lu a bastard and start charging in to help. But Lu is way too fast. He's suddenly right behind the main thug, grabbing his shoulder and just saying, "Hey." The guy is absolutely terrified as Lu calmly says he wants to have a little private chat, so he leans in close and tells the thug to make his henchmen stand down, calling them a total eyesore. Scared for his life, the thug screams at his friends to wait and tells them not to do a single thing, leaving Lu looking pretty satisfied. He just gives a little smirk and calls the guy a good lad. Lu tells Fran he needs a moment to have a word with the guy, so she agrees to wait while she stands there feeling pretty uneasy, wondering if things are actually going to be fine. Lu acts all friendly and asks for the guy's name and age, which the guy answers while shaking, saying his name is Barubi Yuzaru and he's only 17. Lu repeats the name and just notes that 17 is a little on the young side. Yuzaru snaps back that his dad is a baron, but Lu tells him his father isn't the one here right now. He leans in and asks Yuzaru what he's usually up to when he's out causing trouble like this, and when Lu squeezes his hand again, Yuzaru starts screaming in pain and promises to spill everything. The guy starts crying as he explains he's a second-year student at the Royal Magic Academy for Boys, admitting through his tears that he just wants to find some girls to play around with sometime. Lu looks into the guy's head and sees a memory of Yuzaru and his friends being cruel to a girl. There are even more girls locked away in a dark room, looking totally scared and broken. So Lu realizes this guy and his henchmen have been doing this for a while. Yuzaru just looks confused. Lu explains he used magic to read his mind, and now he knows all about how Yuzaru sold those girls as sleeves. He even knows about Yuzaru using his dad to cover it all up, which makes the guy panic and ask how he found out. Yuzaru starts crying while Lu holds on to him. Meanwhile, Fran is watching them from a distance. She wonders what they're talking about, but she's standing too far away to hear a single word, leaving Lu looking down at the guy with a dark expression, calling him a total fiend for everything he's done. He asks the guy if he has any dignity left, then tells Yuzaru he's turning him into the guard. Lu warns him that even though he's just a follower, if Yuzaru ever lays a finger on her again, he's done for. Lu leans in close, telling Yuzaru that he, his henchmen, and even his father are all going to disappear, and as he says it, he mentions seeing some pretty dark stuff hidden in the guy's heart, catching glimpses of all the people Yuzaru has hurt. So, Lu gives him a final warning, saying he'll make sure the same thing happens to Yuzaru if he ever talks about this, telling him to remember that. Yuzaru looks completely out of it, and the second Lu lets go of his collar, he just collapses on the ground, screaming. Lu stands over the guy with a cold look, clearly disgusted by the person he's dealing with, but then, the other thugs start stepping up, cracking their knuckles and looking like they're ready to jump in. Just then, some guards come running around the corner, yelling at everyone to stop the fighting right now. Lu just watches them arrive while the thugs grumble about the timing, though they seem relieved the guards showed up to break it up. Fran rushes over and grabs Lu's arm, asking if he's hurt, but he just looks at her and says he's totally fine. He gives her a kind smile, telling her that the only thing that really matters is that she didn't get hurt. Fran looks up at Lu with a genuine smile, softly thanking him for helping her out back there, and, off to the side, two girls named Michelle and Olga are peeking around a door. Michelle whispers to Olga, asking if that girl is definitely the one everyone calls the Iron Mask because Olga stares closely and confirms it, telling Michelle there's no doubt that it's really her. But they're both confused since she's usually totally dark and has no expression at all during their lecture, so they can't figure out why she looks like she's having the time of her life right now. One of them points out that it's probably because of the guy walking next to her, and as they watch them walk away, they start wondering who he actually is. They notice his clothes look like something a royal would wear, but they just figure he's probably some follower of hers. Olga asks if Michelle is interested in checking them out, and Michelle gets a sneaky look on her face, saying this is going to be a great prank. The two of them decide they're going to jump in to stop those two and mess with the Iron Mask girl for a bit. While, back on the street, Lu tells Fran he's glad the guards showed up when they did, since they kept the whole situation from getting way worse. Fran just nods and agrees as the two of them keep walking through town together. Lu stops and looks back toward the alleyway where those girls were peeking out, and Fran notices his weird mood, asking him what's wrong. He just gives her a quick smile and says it's nothing at all, but Fran still looks a bit unsure about what just happened. As they walk away, Lu thinks to himself that since those girls don't seem like they actually want to cause any real trouble, he'll just let them go for now. The two of them eventually arrive at a massive, fancy building with a clock tower on top, which turns out to be the Kingsley Company's main branch in the capital. The owner of the shop, a guy named Marco Fanti, meets them at the door with a deep bow and welcomes Fran to the store. Fran says good morning back to Marco, who immediately asks if there's anything specific they're looking for today. Fran smiles and tells him that her follower Lu is actually the one doing the shopping, and Marco seems pretty surprised to hear the guy's name. He turns to Lu and gives him a formal welcome to the company, introducing himself as the branch owner. Lu just keeps it casual and says it's nice to meet him, while Marco asks what he can get for him, leaving Lu standing there for a second trying to figure out exactly what he needs. Lu explains that he's starting a new job as a teacher at the academy this spring. He needs to look the part, so he's looking for some stylish clothes since his current outfit is actually a huge pain to move around in. Marco starts taking notes and asks if he should get a few sets of leather robes and some regular outfits ready, and Lu tells him that sounds like a solid plan. The shop owner says he needs to take some measurements first so they can talk about fabrics, but Lu stops him for a second because he needs to whisper something private. Whatever he says totally catches Marco off guard. Marco bows and says he gets it now, thanking Lu as they wrap up the side conversation. Fran is definitely curious and asks what that was all about. Marco starts leading them inside, but Lu just acts like he has no idea what she's talking about. He gives her a wink and says it's just a little something special for the next person who comes in. The group heads further into the building, while someone watching from the window finally realizes they've been spotted. Michelle spots Lu heading into the shop and alerts Olga, who decides it's time to move in. But the second they step inside, a shop assistant greets them with a big welcome, catching both girls totally off guard. The assistant smiles and says she already heard all about them from Fran, then suggests they wait in the back with some tea. Michelle starts panicking and Olga tries to come up with an excuse on the spot, but they can't seem to find the right word. The staff member just ushers them along like it's no big deal. Marco watches from the side with a smug look, knowing he handled the situation perfectly. While the spies are tucked away, Lu stands in the dressing room getting measured while Fran sits and waits for him to finish up. With the measurements done, Marco says it's time to pick out the materials and has an assistant bring over some samples. He shows off a stack of special leather, explaining it's actually dragon skin from a monster a hero killed a long time ago. Then he casually mentions the price is 3 god gold coins and 30,000 regular gold, making Fran's jaw drop. Marco just keeps smiling as he points out that 30,000 gold is enough to buy 2 mansions, leaving the price hanging in the air. Fran is internally panicking because she's sure Lu can't afford the price Marco just dropped, especially since it costs as much as 2 mansions. But Lu just smiles and tells Marco he already has something similar, which makes Marco nearly jump out of his skin. Lu starts rolling up his sleeve as a bright light begins to glow, and right then, he pulls out a stack of dark, shimmering dragon scales that look way more intense than anything in the shop. Marco is completely losing his mind over what he's seeing, and Fran is just as shocked, yelling at Lu to explain what's going on. Looking at the scales, Fran can feel a massive aura coming off them that puts Marco's material to shame. Lu just plays it cool, telling them it's just something his old man gave him. Then he asks Marco if there's enough of it to make new gear for both him and Fran. Marco stands there sweating, totally floored because he thought he was showing Lu the highest quality product possible. But Lu just brought in something even better, leaving Marco wondering who this guy actually is. Marco scrambles out of the room in a total panic, yelling for them to stay put while he goes to grab a professional. He comes back with a master dwarf tradesman named Olvo Gildan, who looks at the material and nearly has a heart attack. Olvo says the skin is from the legendary Dragon King from the Age of Gods, and Fran is just as stunned, asking if that dragon isn't just a myth. Lu stays calm, telling her that there isn't even a price tag for something like this because the real Dragon King was the strongest beast in history until Saul took it down. Olvo mentions that the story was always a mess since the dwarves and Arlv never liked each other, but hearing that name makes Fran freeze up as she realizes Saul might actually be Lu's grandfather. Lu decides to be honest and tells Olvo he's actually related to someone from the Arlv race, which makes the dwarf scream in shock. Lu just smiles and asks if Olvo is still willing to do the job for him, so Olvo takes a second to think, muttering that he usually rather die than help anyone connected to the Arlv, but he can't pass up working with a treasure this rare. He looks Lu in the eye and says he's definitely in. The Lu isn't finished yet and tells him there's one more thing to show him, leaving Olvo completely floored that there's even more to this. Lu suddenly realizes he has no idea if he can actually afford this work, admitting he wasn't even thinking about the cost. But Olvo doesn't care about the money at all. He tells Marco to just get started because he hasn't been this excited to work in years, so Lu gives them a big smile and thanks them for the help. While he's laughing, Fran just stands there watching him, thinking about how well Lu has looked after her. She realizes he's actually incredibly strong and someone she can really count on. Plus, he's just a nice, easygoing guy. As she watches him chat with the dwarf, she can't help but feel that she honestly likes every single thing about him. Moving on to another part of the building, Michelle and Olga are stuck waiting inside the Kingsley Company reception room, and both of them are completely freaking out. They're sitting on the couch looking terrified, muttering about how bad this situation has gotten because if the Academy ever finds out they were busy stalking a principal, things are going to get ugly, especially since the school will definitely say it's not how a lady should act. They're convinced they're looking at a suspension or getting expelled for good. The door swings open and Fran walks into the room, making Michelle and Olga jump nearly out of their skins as she gives them a huge, friendly smile and says hello. She calls them both out by name, but the girls are so terrified they start crying and clinging to each other. They accidentally call her Iron Mask before quickly correcting themselves to Francisca Sensei, and they're both shaking with fear. They're convinced that since the usually cold teacher is smiling, it has to be a fake mask for how mad she actually is, so Fran just keeps being polite, apologizing for making them wait in reception. She then tells them she actually wanted to introduce them to the new teacher joining the academy soon. The girls just look at her completely confused until Lou steps into the room and introduces himself. He gives them a charming look and tells them his name is Lou Blandel, leading the two students to nervously introduce themselves back. Michelle and Olga mention they're both second-year students, but then Fran cuts right to the point. She tells them she heard from Lou that they were following her earlier, and the girls immediately start making excuses, saying they just got carried away and weren't trying to expose her. Fran can only comment on how surprisingly honest they're being. Fran tells the girls she'd prefer if they didn't take such a weird interest in her personal life, and adds that she won't be so nice about it next time, leaving them both completely stunned by how casual she's being. They can't believe their luck and ask if next time means they're actually being forgiven right now. So Fran just giggles and asks if they'd actually prefer to be suspended instead. The girls are still confused about why she's letting them off the hook, but Fran explains that while curiosity is a good trait for a magician to have, overdoing it like they did is a bad habit they need to break, and she gently tells them to just spend some time reflecting on what they did. The two students look up at her with teary eyes, clearly moved by how kind she's being, until Fran realizes they probably haven't had lunch yet and invites them to join her and Lou. The girls are totally shocked to be included, but Fran looks over at Lou to see what he thinks. He just smiles and agrees, saying that eating with more people is always better anyway, leading the whole group to head out to a local spot called the Breezy Restaurant for a high-end meal. Michelle and Olga are in heaven, finishing their tea and cake while talking about how delicious everything is, though Michelle still feels a bit guilty. She asks if it's really okay for them to be eating such a fancy meal, but Fran just tells her it's not a problem at all. Fran keeps the mood light, telling the girls that this whole lunch is basically a lesson on how to act like proper ladies, and she's more than happy to help anyone who's actually interested in learning, which really gets Michelle and Olga hyped up. They start yelling about how they want to do this again, forcing Fran to tell them to keep it down since they're still in public. But Michelle can't help herself. She asks if Lou is really going to be their vice teacher at the academy, and Lou just smiles back, telling them he's actually looking forward to it himself. The two girls share a look, feeling a bit awkward about how things used to be between them and their teacher, so they decide to just come clean. They tell Fran they totally misunderstood what kind of person she was, which catches her completely off guard. Olga admits they never thought she was this nice or friendly, while Michelle starts getting emotional, apologizing for all the times they blew off her lectures in the past. They explain how much they want to become top-tier magical knight, asking if it's okay to start asking her way more questions in class from now on. Things get a little loud again, and Fran has to remind them once more to lower their voices, though the girls just tease her for getting loud herself. Later that night, Lou is back in his room and starts taking off his tie to relax, but he stops when he hears a sudden knock at the door, realizing it's Fran standing outside. She asks if she can come in, and he tells her she's more than welcome to enter. Fran steps into the room holding a book and mentions she wants to go over her schedule for the spring term starting tomorrow, since Lou is totally down for it, casually pointing out that he already read and memorized every single textbook just last night. Fran is completely floored by that, asking if he seriously managed to memorize all of them in such a short time. Lou just says the books were great, even if they're a bit different from what his grandfather taught him. Plus, he can already use all the magic inside, which makes Fran sigh and tell him he's being totally unfair, leaving Lou standing there wondering what he even said wrong. She goes on to tell him how great her day actually was, looking back at how she finally got to have a real conversation with her students, and how much she loved being asked for help as their teacher. She admits she spent so much time doing everything on her own, but now she really wants to do more things alongside her class. Even though she knows she'll never be on Lou's level as a magician, she's determined to give her students her absolute best. So Lou tells her that's not true, insisting she's definitely got some crazy hidden potential just waiting to be tapped into. Fran is surprised and asks how he could possibly know something like that, but Lou just says he can see it in her aura. He's positive her magic power is about to hit a whole new level, and he tells her not to worry about a thing, smiling while he promises she's going to be an even better magician down the road. He even offers to lend her his own power whenever she needs it, telling her the most important thing is that she starts believing in herself, which completely touches her heart, and she suddenly lunges forward to pull him into a super tight hug. Lu is caught totally off guard by the sudden contact, stumbling back a bit while he asks her what's wrong. Fran just ignores the question and quietly thanks him, leaving Lu standing there in total silence while he tries to process what's happening, so he just stays still and lets her hold on to him for a while longer in the quiet room. He looks down at her with a really soft expression. It's a quiet moment between them before the night finally comes to an end, and Fran eventually heads to bed, tucked in and sleeping soundly through the night. While she's asleep, Lu stands alone and prepares to use his spirit transformation magic to get things moving. Lu heads out into the night, moving quickly through a rundown part of the royal capital, while he stays focused on where he's going. Shil flies right beside him and points out that they're almost there, so Lu looks over at her with a calm smile and asks if she's ready to come along with him. Meanwhile, in a dark room, a local boss is drinking and asking his guys why Barubi got scared and fired them, and one of his thugs explains that the guy totally lost it. Apparently, he was so terrified he ran straight to the guards to confess. The boss looks pretty annoyed and says they can't let the royal family get their hands on their group, but his men are starting to freak out about getting caught. The boss just tells them to shut up and stop worrying because he has a plan to hide out in Batland until things cool off, though he's still set on getting even with that kid. The guys start talking about how pretty the girl with Lu was, and they all seem to agree that they should just grab her, turn her into a sleeve, and sell her to make even more money than their old boss ever did. The thugs are sitting around drinking, planning to grab the girl so they can use her and then sell her off. The boss smirks and asks if they're ready to have some fun, while his man laughs and says he's actually really excited about it. As the boss sits there looking smug, a foot steps into the room, and a cold voice tells them he isn't going to forgive them for what they're doing. Lu just appears out of thin air, looking totally bored while telling the group they seem way worse than the last guy he fought. One thug panics and asks who he is, while the boss jumps up, shocked that anyone found their way inside. The thug points a shaking finger at Lu and yells to the boss that this is the kid they were talking about, which sends the boss into a total panic. The boss can't believe Lu actually tracked them down, but one of his guys doesn't wait around. He grabs a bottle and hurls it at Lu's head, telling him to eat it. The bottle flies straight at him, but passes right through his body and smashes against the wall behind him. Lu doesn't even flinch, standing there like he's not even physical. The thugs start losing it, wondering if Lu is some kind of ghost, but one of them tries to act tough and tells the rest to stop being scared and just kill him. Lu looks at them with a terrifying cold stare and simply says that he can see everything. He starts describing the spirits of all the women they've hurt and sold off, and suddenly the ghosts of those victims start showing up right out of the thugs' own memories. Lu stares them down with pure disgust, telling them they're absolute scum who have never done anything good for the city. Lu stares the thugs down with total contempt. He tells them straight up that people like them are just a waste of space and only cause trouble for everyone else, leading to the guys just laughing it off. One of them pulls a knife and tells Lu he's got a big mouth for a little kid, but they're not ready for Shilf to suddenly explode into action. She tears through the room like a whirlwind, and the thugs start screaming as they're sliced up and tossed around like rag. The whole place turns into a mess. One guy gets his face slammed into the floor, while the rest of the crew tries to scramble away in a total panic. Even Lu looks a little confused by how fast things are moving. He puts his hands up and asks what's even happening, admitting he's not even sure himself before he decides to keep the pressure on. He puts his hands together and calls out for Undyne, and suddenly a massive water spirit appears right above him. She's surrounded by sharp shards of frozen energy, and Lu just keeps his focus on the targets in front of him. The thugs lose their minds when they see the ice forming. They start shouting and begging for him to stop, but the magic is already closing in on them, making the boss stand there in complete shock. He has to listen to his men screaming as dark shadows grab them from below, and just when he thinks it can't get worse, Lu starts walking toward him through the glowing energy. The boss is totally paralyzed with fear as the kid closes the distance without saying a single word. The thug boss is totally losing his mind, gasping for air while he asks Lu who he even is. He screams at him to stay back and calls him a monster, but Lu doesn't blink. He just tells the guy that they're the ones selling women, so they're the real monsters here. The boss's eyes go wide with pure terror as Lu looks him dead in the eye and says he'll never let Fran go through anything like that. He gives his fingers a sharp snap, and everything goes south for the thug. They start screaming for help as pillars of magic wreck the room, leaving Lu standing there with his spirits like it's nothing. The screams echo everywhere as Lu tells the boss that this is the end for him, and he tells the whole group to just give up and head straight to the deepest part of the underworld while his spirits hover over him. The hideout is a total wreck now. There are bodies scattered all over the place and blood everywhere. Lu walks past a broken thug slumped against the wall before he calls out the name Vivi. A small spirit girl with long pigtails shows up in a flash of light, looking pretty happy to be there. Lu looks at the mess and tells her to take these guys and bury them in the underworld, making sure she cleans up all the blood too. Vivi just gives a cute grin and opens a giant black void in the floor, swallowing up every trace of the thugs and the fight until there's nothing left. The hideout is completely silent now, with every trace of the thugs and the struggle gone. Just like that, Lu gives Vivi a little pat and tells her she did a great job. She looks pretty proud of herself while he turns to the other spirits and lets them know they did well too. They all seem happy to help him out, but Lu checks the time and says they really need to head back. They've got to be home before the night ends. Later on at dinner, Fran is super excited and tells her mom to listen up. She brags about how Lu managed to memorize every single textbook in one night. Adelaide can't believe it, but Fran just keeps going, saying he can do every magic technique in there too. Adelaide just watches him eat, thinking about how he always blows past people's expectations. So she asks what he's actually planning to teach at the academy while he's just casually sitting there having some bread. Lu says he's down for whatever, so Adelaide mentions they really need someone for offensive magic or high-level summoning. She asks if he thinks he can handle those classes. Lu just gives a casual smile and says either one is totally fine with him. Adelaide isn't quite sure about his answer, so she asks if there's actually any subject he isn't good at while the table goes quiet for a second as everyone waits for him to come up with an answer. Fran leans in way too close with a smirk, pressuring him to give them some kind of response. So Lu rubs his chin and admits he can't really think of a subject he can't do, except for one specific thing, and it turns out he's completely hopeless at fortune-telling, even though he likes to imagine himself as some mysterious seer. Adelaide finds it pretty funny that he finally found a weakness, but then she has to tell Fran to stop laughing so loud, leaving Adelaide to point out it's normal to be bad at something, though Fran is still blown away that Lu is a total all-rounder. Fran suddenly loses it and yells, asking if it's really true, while Lu just nods along with his mouth full of bread. She keeps shouting about why no one told her such a huge secret, but Adelaide just tells her to chill out, reminding her she was passed out when they discussed it. Adelaide gets serious and explains he has to hide his power, because if the royal family found out, they'd definitely drag him off to be a hero. Adelaide points her finger and tells Lu that since he's a teacher now, he really needs to just pick one magic type and stick with it. She explains that most people usually have one main element they're good at and a second one they're okay with, then asks him to choose between fire, earth, wind, and water. But Lu looks pretty stressed out as he thinks it over, so Adelaide asks if it's that hard of a choice and offers to just pick for him, which makes Lu hesitate, because he knows the spirits see him as someone who can do everything, and he honestly hates the idea of being restricted by some set order. He looks them in the eye and tells them he'd actually be pretty bothered if they made the decision for him, since Adelaide just laughs and says she's interested in his choice anyway, though Fran can tell her mom isn't worried about his feelings at all. Lu asks if he can pick his own special combo, and asks what most of the other teachers at the academy usually go with, so Fran lets him know that water and earth are the ones people see most often around the school, leading Lu to decide he'll go with fire as his main and wind as his second, which Fran realizes is the exact same setup she and her mother have. Adelaide thinks that's a good start, but immediately moves on to the next test, asking Lu if he can show off some high-level magic by summoning a familiar spirit right there. Lu asks if he can just show off his magic after they finish their meal, but Adelaide isn't having it and decides they're all heading straight to the research room, leading the group into a room packed with old books and glass lab equipment, where Fran mentions how curious she is to see what kind of spirit Lu will bring out, and Adelaide agrees, saying she's just as interested to see it herself. So Adelaide explains that these spirits are usually just simple animals like cats or birds, though Fran jokes that Lu will probably summon something way more intense like a wolf or a lion, which gets a pretty awkward reaction out of Lu as he tries to find the right way to explain his situation, and then he just comes out with it, admitting he can summon a Cerberus and a Gryphon, but points out those aren't exactly the same as normal familiars. Fran and Adelaide both completely lose it, yelling out the names of the legendary monsters in total shock, because they realize he's talking about giant underworld beasts that would cause a massive citywide panic if they ever showed up in the capital. So Lu tries to calm them down with a nervous laugh, promising that he's definitely not planning on bringing those things out right now. Adelaide asks if he has anything else to show them that's maybe a bit smaller and more adorable, and Lu awkwardly admits he might have something like that. Lu mentions that he's not even sure if they'd be okay with what he's about to do, which leaves Fran looking pretty confused about why they wouldn't allow it. He explains that the creature he's thinking of is actually hated in this world, so he won't go through with the summon unless they both give him the okay, and Adelaide starts to wonder if this hated thing is actually dangerous to people, admitting that the whole idea is starting to freak her out a little bit. But Fran doesn't hesitate, shouting out that she doesn't care about the risks because she has total faith in Lu, while Adelaide just watches her, clearly surprised by how much she trusts him, as Fran adds that if Lu thinks the spirit is fine, then she's sure it's actually a good one. Lu gives her a small smile and thanks her, promising that no matter what happens, he can definitely keep both of them safe. He starts the ritual right then, calling for the gate between the present and forever to unlock and commanding something to come through the path of the underworld, so he continues the chant, addressing the being known as the Morning Star and the chief of the apostles who lives deep below and works miracles. As he calls for divine protection and godly power, Adelaide stands there completely stunned by the sheer weight of the magic he's throwing around, and then Lu's expression turns sharp as he gives the final command for the gate to the underworld to finally open up. The summon finally works and a girl in a fancy dress shows up, introducing herself as Moraru, and she adds that she's Lu's subordinate and the kind of being that can move between this world and the underworld. Moraru looks at her master and asks if he was the one who called for her, while Fran and Adelaide just stand there, looking completely weirded out. Lu introduces the two of them as his friends, asking if he can introduce Moraru to them. She gets all excited and says that anyone who's a friend of Lu is definitely a friend of hers too, but then her tone changes a bit as she starts laughing to herself, like she's thinking of something else. She gives them this creepy look and says they both look like really delicious sources of magic, which totally freaks them out. Lu doesn't waste any time and tells Moraru to cut it out and keep her hands off of them, making it clear that he's the one in charge here. He looks over at his friends and apologizes for the way she's acting. Adelaide just stands there with her arms crossed, still trying to process the crazy situation Lu just put them in. Adelaide starts putting the pieces together, thinking about the verses in Lu's chant, and realizing that some of those spells were definitely forbidden, and she's completely floored by the fact that Lu can summon such a terrifying creature from the underworld, especially one tied to the Morning Star. Looking at him, she can't help but wonder who Lu actually is, while Fran just stands there trying to make sense of the situation. So Lu notices their faces and apologizes for the chaos, promising to give the girl a real introduction this time around. He starts off by telling them her name is Moraru, a girl dressed in a dark frilly outfit who turns out to be a vampire from the incubus family, which is a pretty heavy reveal for everyone in the room. Fran repeats the words back in shock, unable to believe she's standing in front of a vampire and an incubus. Moraru keeps her cool and offers to explain the basics of how her kind survives, telling them that whenever a vampire sucks blood, they are actually pulling the magic power directly out of a person's flesh, because unlike humans, they can't just grab magic from the air and change it into their own power, leaving them with no other choice. Moraru explains that this same rule applies to any of the brethren they've cursed, and hearing this, Fran just stands there looking completely shocked. The girl tells them not to get the wrong idea, because even though she'd love to feast on both of them, she isn't like some ordinary vampire. She goes on to explain that since she has a spiritual incubus living inside her, she doesn't actually need to get her magic from blood, which means she won't be acting like a typical vampire at all, though she still needs magic power to survive. She mentions with a sly look that she just has another way of getting that energy. Fran looks pretty nervous and asks her how exactly that's supposed to work. Moraru just smiles and tells the group it would be a lot faster if she just showed them how she does it. She looks up at Lu and asks him to excuse her for a moment. Then she suddenly spins and leans into him while Fran watches, totally frozen. Moraru gets close enough to touch his neck and clings to him, happily calling out Lu's name while the other two watch from the background, and Fran just stands there clenching her skirt, looking pretty upset at them. Moraru leans in close to Lu and whispers to Fran, asking her if she has any idea what the most delicious kind of magic power actually is. Then she explains that the best stuff is found right in the heart, and she likes to keep her hand on Lu's chest to help herself to it. Fran can only watch in total shock as Lu finally has enough and grabs the girl's hand, pulling it off his chest. He looks pretty annoyed and tells Moraru she really needs to start thinking about how she's acting, especially since he already told her that the people here are his friends. Moraru realizes she went too far and apologizes to Fran, admitting that she was probably teasing her a bit much. She goes on to explain that her species doesn't need to act like low-level vampires who use their fangs for power. They can actually live just like normal humans during the day and night. She finishes by saying she's simply Lu's loyal servant and nothing more, leaving Fran standing there in silence. Lu decides to wrap things up and says he'll try introducing her again when they have another chance, but Fran suddenly shouts for him to wait, and she turns to Moraru telling the girl that she actually wants to welcome her to the group. Lu calls out to Fran, who reminds him that she already told him she trusts him. She says that since he trusts this new girl, she's going to trust her too, and Fran turns to her mom to get some backup on the decision. Adelaide says she doesn't mind at all, as long as Lu is the one taking full responsibility for her. Fran walks over to Moraru and apologizes for being so scared at first. She admits she was just caught off guard by everything earlier, but she's totally fine now. She gives Moraru a big smile and says she really hopes they can find a way to get along with each other, which actually seems to touch Moraru, who looks down and quietly thanks her for being so welcoming. Lu decides to drop a pretty big secret, telling everyone that Moraru's parents were actually regular humans. The news leaves Fran and her mother looking completely floored, so Lu explains that while it's incredibly rare and nobody knows why it happens, an incubus can sometimes be born to human parents. He goes on to say that 8 years ago, while he was out training with his grandfather, he found Moraru nearly dead. She had been chased out of her own village and left to die in the forest, but hearing the story makes everything click for Fran. She realizes Lu was the one who rescued her and gave her a place to belong, and looking at Moraru now, Fran can tell right away that the girl is completely in love with him. Moraru looks away, clearly feeling the weight of her situation. The reality is that as a demon, she can't ever really have a normal future with Lu. It's a painful truth she's been carrying around alone for 8 whole years, but Fran can't help but feel a sting of jealousy thinking about Moraru hugging him. Even so, she realizes her own feelings are nothing compared to the long years of suffering Moraru has endured, so the sound of a chair scraping back pulls her out of her thought. Lu stands up and calls out to both Fran and her mother Adelaide, getting their full attention as he gives them a deep, sincere bow. He thanks them from the bottom of his heart for being willing to accept Moraru and give her a chance, and he admits that even though she's technically a demon, there was just no way he could have looked the other way and left her to die. Hearing that makes Fran smile. She realizes this is exactly why she likes him. His gentle side is what makes him special. But soon enough, things shift over to the next big event at the academy. It's officially the day for spring training, and the campus is looking bright and ready for the new term. Inside the faculty room, the teachers are all gathered together. Everyone's exchanging morning greetings and getting settled in for the day's work when Kelly stands at the front to make an official announcement. She tells everyone that per the principal's recommendation and her own, they got a new teacher joining them as a temporary instructor for the year. Lu steps forward with a confident look, introducing himself to his new colleague. He tells them he's the new guy on the team, but promises to work as hard as he can to keep up. Adelaide explains to the room that Lu actually saved her life during an attack. Because of that, and after talking it over with the vice principal, they decided to bring him on as a teacher. Kelly jumps in next, apologizing for making things personal, but letting everyone know Lu is also her follower. She officially introduces him to the staff, telling them all to give Lu Brandel a warm welcome. One of the teachers, Cindy Ryan, steps up with a huge smile to introduce herself. She mentions that Lu probably already met her husband, the Count, and she tells Lu that her husband seems really interested in him. Lu just laughs it off and shakes her hand, saying he's grateful for the support, but someone else suddenly cuts in, calling him Brandel Sensei as they reach out. It catches Lu totally off guard, and he finds himself face to face with a woman winking at. She tells him she's really looking forward to working together, and she introduces herself as Liliane Barrier, posing in a way that makes it pretty clear she's trying to get his attention. Lu tries to be polite and start a normal greeting, but before he can even finish his sentence, he feels a sudden bump. Liliane pulls him in close, and Lu ends up with his face buried right in her chest. It's a total shock to him, though Liliane doesn't seem to mind at all. She blushes and teases him for being so bold, calling him Lu Sensei, with a look that says she knows exactly what she's doing. Lu is completely flustered and starts sweating, stammering out an apology while he's still stuck in that awkward position. Fran absolutely loses it, screaming Lu's name at the top of her lungs, while she sits there on the floor in total shock. She goes off on him, yelling that he can't just go jumping into the chest of a girl he just met. Lu is just slumped over, literally steaming from the ears while the other teachers watch on. One lady says it was clearly an accident, but the guy next to her just feels bad for him, while Fran keeps huffing and puffing. Liliane mentions she didn't actually mind the contact, but that just makes Fran snap back that her being okay with it isn't the point. After things calm down, they head over to the second-year classroom. Fran tells Lu it's time to head in, and he says he's ready to go, but Fran stops for a second and looks at him, mentioning how he doesn't seem nervous about teaching a class at all. Lu tells her that isn't the case and that he's actually looking forward to the whole thing. He gives her a smile and says since it's his first lecture with her, he really wants it to go well, so they finally swing the classroom door open together. Fran leads the way, calling out a loud morning greeting to all the students inside. Lu and Fran walk into the classroom together, but the room is a total mess with students chatting and ignoring them. Fran notices that nobody is paying her any attention like usual, and she looks a bit annoyed while the girls in the front just keep laughing. She ignores the noise and makes her way behind the teacher's podium to get the class started. Looking down, she tells herself to stay calm and get a grip since this is Lu's very first lecture, and she wants to make sure it goes right. So she shouts a massive good morning to the entire room to finally shut everyone up. Once she has their attention, she tells the class that spring training is about to start and they need to use everything they've learned for the new semester. The students are caught off guard, and Michelle whispers to Olga about how Ms. Iron Mask seems way more energetic than usual, making him wonder what happened to cause the change. Fran keeps things moving and announces that the new vice homeroom teacher is going to introduce himself before they start. Lou steps up with a huge smile, telling everyone his name is Lou Brandel and that he's really looking forward to getting along with all of them. The girls in the class start giggling immediately, especially Michelle, who notices right away that he used a casual way to refer to himself. The girls in the back keep laughing, whispering about how Lou looks like a total conner, while Fran just stands there trying to keep it together. She ignores the chatter and tells the class she's starting the lecture now, leading with some basic breathing techniques to get them moving. The lesson covers how the most important thing for magic is relaxing the mind, though it's a lot more tiring for beginners than it looks. Fran tells everyone to open their books to the first chapter, while Lou stands by, asking if the students are actually ready to start, but as he looks down at his own book, he spots something that catches him off guard. Meanwhile, the rest of the room is a mess of whispers and snickering as the students just keep gossiping with each other. It's pretty clear that nobody is actually on the right page or even paying attention to the lesson on breathing, and only a tiny handful of students are even trying to take Fran's lecture seriously. Lou watches the chaos from the front of the room, his expression turning sharp as he realizes how disrespectful the class is being. He stares down at the textbook, his hand starting to twitch as he realizes he might have to step in. The girl at the desk looks up and asks Lou what he's even doing, but he just tells her it's time for breathing techniques, not whatever she's doing. She looks away, acting all stubborn and claiming she's already researched all that stuff. Lou doesn't buy it and reminds her that Fran is the one who decides the lesson, so he wants her to participate with everyone else. He understands her point, but then she introduces herself as Oreribu and makes it clear he shouldn't call her Ome anymore. Lou just smiles and calls her Oreri, then casually asks if they should just start studying those breathing techniques together. Meanwhile, the girls in the back are completely ignoring everything, laughing and gossiping about whatever is on their mind. The girl with the flower in her hair is right in the middle of it when a voice suddenly calls out to the whole group. It's Lou, and he isn't smiling anymore. He tells them they're being a total pain to the students actually trying to learn, and says they should just leave if they aren't going to be serious. One girl starts panicking, but the one with the flower just keeps smiling. She tries to keep the conversation going like she didn't hear him, but Lou snaps his fingers right in her face and shocks her. Josephine clutches her chest in a panic, realizing her voice is completely gone, and she can't even make a sound. It's impossible to believe, but she looks at Lou's smug face and wonders if he actually used silence magic on her. Lou doesn't care about her freak out and turns to another girl, demanding to know what her name is. So the girl nervously stammers out that her name is Josephine, and Lou just casually thanks her while the rest of the class watches on. Lou looks right at her and asks if she can finally hear him, then leans in close to tell her to shut up and actually join the rest of the group for the lesson. Josephine loses it and stands up so fast her chair flies back, looking like she's ready to kill him right there. But Lou catches her wrist like it's nothing and tells her not to be so ridiculous, which leads to him tapping her forehead and using a spell to settle her down instantly, leaving her sitting outside on the academy grass later on, looking totally drained and done with everything. Josephine's classmates crowd around her with worried looks, calling out her name, and noticing she's finally coming to. She sits up on the grass asking where they are, so her friends explain they're on the campus because the weather was nice enough for outdoor exercises, which is when they drop the news that Lou was actually the one who carried her all the way out here. The girls lean in close to ask if her body feels alright, leaving Josephine totally stunned and confused. She looks down at her hand, realizing that for some reason she feels amazing, like she just had the best sleep of her entire life, and that's when Lou shows up behind her, casually asking if she's finally done napping. He offers a quick apology for using magic to knock her out, but explains that Fran was working hard on her lesson, and he didn't want any more interruption. He looks her right in the eyes and tells her she really needs to start taking these lectures seriously, even giving her a charming smile while saying he's practically begging her to just play along. Josephine isn't having any of it. She yells no way and tells him she doesn't want to listen to a single word he says. Josephine looks away for a second, but then she gets this look in her eyes like she's got a plan. She turns back to Lou with a smug grin, telling him that if he actually gets on his knees and apologizes to her, maybe she'll think about taking Fran's classes seriously. She's totally convinced she's won, thinking this is the perfect way to punish a commoner for looking down on a noble. She even tells him he should start shaking in shame. Lu doesn't even blink, just casually telling her there's no way he's doing that, which leaves her completely stunned, and she starts losing it, screaming at him and asking if he's really a commoner. She yells that he's supposed to just do whatever a noble tells him to do, but Lu stays completely calm. He looks her right in the face and says he understands perfectly how the social ranks in this country work. However, he reminds her that they're currently at a school. He lays it out for her, saying that here he's the teacher and she's the student, which makes him her master. He finishes by saying he isn't trying to act like a big deal or anything, but she really needs to watch her mouth when she's talking to him. Josephine just laughs in his face, saying the whole idea is ridiculous, and there's no world where she'd ever see a guy like him as her master. Lu just gives her a little smirk and snaps his fingers, which sends a shock through her and makes her jump. Josephine stands there totally stunned, barely able to get a word out as she realizes how unfair his magic is. Lu just starts walking away, casually mentioning that time is almost up and asking if she's coming along, leaving her to snap out of it and yell for him to wait up. Lu stops and looks back as she tries to act all high and mighty again, telling him that if he's really a gentleman, he should be escorting a lady like her back. Surprisingly, Lu just smiles and takes her hand, leading her along while she looks down all embarrassed, and the other girls watching from the grass can't believe it, whispering about how Josephine is actually being obedient for a change. Lu calls out to Fran as they walk up, and Josephine asks if the other girl can join them, which Fran is totally fine with. They all sit down together, and Lu tells them they shouldn't worry so much about the specific breathing techniques in their textbook since everyone is different, and the most important part is just relaxing the mind and focusing to really bring out their power. The girls listen closely, thinking over all the complicated breathing styles they've learned while Lu keeps things simple. Lu tells the girls they should try out different things to see what works best for them personally, while he explains that the main goal is just to relax, then asks everyone to go ahead and lie down on the grass. Josephine follows along, but can't help wondering if this really counts as training or if they're just wasting time. She thinks about how school is usually just a way to kill time until her parents arrange a marriage for her, yet she's actually taking this lesson seriously, closing her eyes and focusing on taking some long, deep breaths so she can truly relax. But then she feels something poking her cheek and wonders what's going on. Opening one eye, she sees the little spirit shelf and doesn't quite get what's happening, but it feels incredibly comfy. It's like she's being wrapped up in a soft, gentle breeze that puts her completely at ease until she falls fast asleep, leading Fran to tell Lu that they should probably wake her up since the lesson is almost over. Lu just looks down at the sleeping girl with a smile and suggests letting her rest for just a little bit more. Lu mentions that Josephine is likely synchronizing with her spirit right now, which catches Fran completely off guard as he goes on to explain how spirits find humans they're compatible with. First they connect, then they get closer as they get more interested, and even though Josephine might not be strong enough to fully link up yet, Lu thinks this is a great start for her. Fran asks Lu if he can lead the rest of the class back while she stays behind to look after Josephine. Lu just says sure, and as he starts heading back, the other girls run up to Fran. They're all shouting her name and looking more excited than usual. They start talking about how much fun the lecture was and how they finally got the hang of the breathing techniques, which honestly shocks Fran. She watches them laugh and wonder why they never did this before, thinking to herself if they're actually serious about it being fun. She listens to them go on about how light their bodies feel and how nice the whole experience was, and looking at them she realized she's never seen the students look so full of life or heard them call a lesson so fulfilling. It's a total change from how things usually go. Watching Lu walk ahead with a small smile, Fran finally admits to herself that bringing him to the academy was the best decision she could have made. Kelly stands by the window watching Lu from a distance. He's just standing out there alone, while she thinks back to training and old memories of magic practice. It feels like a lifetime ago. In the present, Kelly is at her desk in the office. The room is quiet until a knock at the door breaks the silence. Kelly looks up and asks who's there, so Lu says his name from outside. Kelly tells him to come in, and as he enters, she apologizes for the sudden meeting. Lu says it's fine and asks what's up. Kelly gets a bit nervous and clears her throat, saying they haven't talked in a long time, which Lu takes pretty casually. He tells her to sit down and offers to pour some tea. Kelly mentions his first lecture went great. She's heard he's already popular with the girls. Lu just sits back with his tea and asks if that's really how everyone sees it. Kelly looks over and asks what's up, noticing that Lu has been sitting there with a grin on his face. It's starting to get her attention. Lu just smiles and says she's been acting really upbeat lately, and he was actually worried since she left Sato. Kelly looks down at her tea and says a lot of things have happened. She sets her cup down on the table, and the mood gets a bit heavier. She mentions hearing a rumor that Sylvestel passed away not too long ago. Lu looks at her and confirms it, saying that's the whole reason he ended up leaving Sato. He keeps a calm smile, explaining that Ryu took over for the old man and he's sure she'll be a great soul. Kelly's eyes sharpen at the mention of the name, and she quietly says Ryudia under her breath. Lu looks right at her and points out that before the old man died, there were rumors she was the one meant to be the successor. The room gets quiet as Lu asks the big question. He wants to know why she didn't take over his spot. Kelly doesn't say anything yet, but she looks at him and wonders if he's the same human the old man found in the woods. Kelly remembers back to when Lu first showed up. The elves were all whispering about how he was just some weird kid who lost his memories in the woods, and nobody really liked having an outsider around. They couldn't wrap their heads around what the soul was thinking by bringing him in, especially since it became their job to train a human. Sylvestre had just randomly brought him home and decided this kid was going to be the next leader. But even though everyone was skeptical, Lu just kept smiling. He was always so upbeat that it actually started to make some of them feel a little uneasy, and it didn't help that the Arl were famous for hating anyone who wasn't one of them. The local guys would go out of their way to point and laugh at him, and they teased him constantly, but Lu never let it get to him. He just kept that same happy look on his face like he didn't have a care in the world. And as Sylvestre kept piling on new tasks for him, Lu just kept crushing them. He proved over and over again that he was actually pretty incredible, and by his third summer there, things were finally coming to a head. A massive crowd gathered for the big event because it was time for the Spirit Epiphany. This was the huge day where every magician finally gets their divine protection from the spirits, basically the moment that decides their whole future, and as Lu walks out, the entire crowd starts buzzing. Everyone's eyes are on him, whispering to each other that the outsider kid is finally stepping up. Some of the elves in the crowd start whispering, acting like there's no way a human could ever actually handle a spirit's divine protection. And as Lu stands there looking totally calm, it turns out that on that specific day, Sylvestre had already called exactly what was about to happen. The prediction was that Lu would be able to accept the power of every single spirit at once, which would mark the start of his life as an incredible magician. Sylvestre got more and more invested in Lu after that, and while the spirits are all over him, Lu gets the title of an all-rounder, leaving Kelly feeling a bit left behind. Even though she was a top-tier magician, seeing Lu's crazy power made a lot of other elves just give up on training entirely, so she realized he was destined to be the next leader and decided to head out into the human world to study magic on her own. But as they're talking, Lu mentions that a war actually broke out back home, which completely catches Kelly off guard and leaves her speechless. Turns out there was a huge fight over the idea of a human becoming the next leader, and it got so heated that people were ready to start a real war over it. Lu looks down, feeling like the whole mess was his fault, and that he basically ruined their society. But right as he's getting into his head, Kelly reaches out and flicks him right on the forehead, cutting off his dark thoughts and making him yelp. Kelly calls Lu an idiot and tells him he shouldn't look so down, since he didn't actually do anything wrong, which makes her smile as she tells him it's just like him to be like this, since he really doesn't have a greedy bone in his body. She gets curious and asks why he even decided to follow that absurd princess in the first place, and Lu just laughs it off. He tells her it really just happened by chance, but Kelly doesn't seem totally convinced by that answer. His expression turns serious as he looks her right in the eye, explaining that he simply wants to protect Fran. Suddenly, Lu realizes what time it is and freaks out because Fran is already waiting for him. He starts running for the door, yelling back an apology because he's gotta move, leaving Kelly standing there completely stunned while he waves goodbye, thanking her and telling her the tea was great on his way out. Kelly is left alone in the room, quietly repeating his words to herself about wanting to protect Fran. Later, Lu catches up with Fran as they walk through the grounds, and she asks if he was busy at the deputy head's office. Lu looks pretty relieved, telling Fran he's glad they finally got the chance to sit down and talk things out, and Fran catches his vibe, mentioning he definitely looks like he's in a better mood now. As they walk, they both stop short when they see a group of students moving through the courtyard, specifically Michelle and Olga, who are walking a bit ahead of them. Fran gets a bit worried, wondering why they'd be heading toward the arena at this time of day. Lu points out a third person leading the way and asks who she is, which totally catches Fran off guard. She recovers and explains that the girl is Jezel Kalpanti, a third year who's not only the student council president, but a huge talent. And it turns out she's also the boss of the magic martial arts club that Michelle and Olga are in. Fran still thinks the whole thing is sketchy since it's way too early for any club stuff to be starting, and beyond that, she can't help but worry because both Michelle and Olga looked completely miserable walking behind her. Fran is really feeling uneasy about the whole situation, so she asks Lu if they can trail the group, and he's totally on board, telling her he'll go wherever she goes. They follow them all the way to the massive arena building on the academy ground. As Fran watches the three girls head inside from a distance, someone in the group seems to pick up on her presence, almost like they have a sixth sense for being watched. Before Fran can even get close, Jezel spins around and asks if she needs something, which completely catches Fran off guard. Fran starts sweating a bit, realizing she got busted before she could even get a single word out. Behind Jezel, Michelle and Olga look like they've seen a ghost, shouting out in surprise when they realize their teacher is right there. Fran ignores the drama and asks Jezel straight up what she's planning to do with the two students, but Jezel just shuts her down, saying it isn't any of the school's business. Fran doesn't back down at all, telling her that since those two are in her class, it's definitely her business, and Jezel just repeats the words back to her, sounding like she's looking for a fight. She narrows her eyes and snaps that the teacher's claim is total nonsense. Jezel doesn't hold back, yelling that Fran has never cared about her class and asking who was the one who pushed her own students aside, leaving Fran stuttering and unable to find an answer. Jezel keeps going, explaining that these girls are her disciples and have dealt with the same kind of pain she once went through. She snaps that she doesn't want a lecture from an irresponsible teacher and explains that Michelle and Olga have been acting weird since the morning, but they eventually confessed everything when she cornered them. It turns out they were stalking people just for fun, and Jezel makes it clear that kind of behavior isn't okay for a knight or a lady, so she's taken it upon herself to train their minds and bodies, claiming she's just doing the job that Fran failed to do. With a smug look, she tells Fran she should actually be more thankful for the help, and that the teacher needs to spend some time thinking about how irresponsible she's been. Just then, Lou chimes in right behind her, saying they already handled the problem and she doesn't really need to get involved, which completely freaks Jezel out. She spins around, demanding to know who he is and how he even got behind her without a sound. Lou gives a friendly wave and introduces himself, telling Jezel that he's the new vice teacher and also happens to be Fran's follower. Jezel is completely caught off guard, trying to process that this random guy is actually the new teacher everyone's been talking about. She can't believe a simple guy like him managed to sneak up on her, and it really gets under her skin that a commoner spoke to her so casually. Lou points out that the girls were just stalking them and have already apologized for it. Jezel snaps back that as their senior, she still needs to set them straight. When Lou just stands there staring at her, she starts getting really self-conscious and demands to know what he's looking at, so Lou gives her a knowing smile, saying she doesn't need to act like that since it's obvious she has her own curiosities about other people. The suggestion hits a nerve, leaving Jezel sweating and screaming that what he's saying is totally ridiculous. Watching from the side, Michelle and Olga are just confused, wondering what it is Jezel actually wants to talk about, but Jezel has heard enough, calling Lou a bastard commoner and warning him about the consequences of insulting her. She loses her cool completely, pointing a finger and demanding a duel, swearing she'll slice him in half for disrespecting her family name. Michelle is totally shocked, shouting about the fact that there's actually going to be a fight. Jezel grinds her teeth, saying she'll battle this commoner and make him apologize for his attitude, and she continues that she won't be happy until she has him bowing on the ground in a dejeza. Lou tells Jezel she insulted Fran, who really cares for her students as a teacher, and as Fran's representative, he says he's officially accepting her request for a battle. Fran looks on with a worried face, while Michelle just completely loses it and screams. Michelle jumps in and tells them both to wait, asking if they're actually serious because this is getting out of hand. But Lou looks her in the eye and says he's dead serious, then asks Jezel if she is too. Jezel snaps back that he's being ridiculous, and of course she's ready to go, claiming that since she's the one who decides battles in this country, there won't be any problem at all. Fran steps in and tells Jezel and Lou that as the principal, she can't allow them to risk their lives like this, then frantically asks what they're even supposed to do. But Michelle speaks up and suggests they use the hunting forest instead, explaining the goal would be to see who can hunt the most high-quality monster. She adds that this way she won't have to get dragged into the fight herself, asking everyone how that plan sounds to them. Jezel is caught completely off guard by the suggestion, repeating the name of the forest like she can't believe it, since the hunting forest is a pretty well-known spot on the edge of the royal capital. It's basically a training ground where students from the night school go to practice their magic while taking on real monsters, and Michelle notes they'll need to get permission for it first, but Jezel is already on board and says she'll accept those terms. Jezel shouts that he needs to promise her something first, that the loser has to do absolutely anything the winner says. Michelle looks back at Fran with a worried face as the stakes for this match get way higher than they expected. Both Michelle and Olga start breaking down in tears, saying the whole situation is their fault and apologizing over and over for the mess they caused. Fran stops the girls from apologizing and pulls them both into a tight hug, telling them she's the one who messed up by not looking after them better. But Michelle can't stop crying, saying she's so sorry for everything that happened as she leans into the hug. Lou watches them for a second before speaking up, telling the girls that it's all going to be okay, and with a calm smile, he tells them they can just leave the whole situation to him. Later on at the student dorms, the sun starts setting as everyone heads back to their rooms for the night, but the peace gets wrecked when Jezel slams a door open and screams for Nadia at the top of her lungs. Jezel doesn't even say hello, she just demands that Nadia listens to her because she has a huge request, but Nadia just sits there with a drink, laughing and asking why Jezel didn't even bother to knock before barging in. It turns out Nadia Shararowa is the vice president of the student council and a third-year genius, and she's just watching Jezel lose it, so Jezel keeps venting about how she's never been so offended in her life. While Nadia tries to get her to calm down and explain the story, Nadia listens to the request and tells Jezel she understands, asking if Jezel really wants to borrow her strength for the upcoming hunting forest. Jezel looks pretty stressed about it and apologizes for dropping such a huge favor on her so suddenly. She even leans her head all the way down on the table, saying Nadia is the only person she can turn to, and that she feels totally in her debt. Nadia just looks at her and laughs a bit, saying she can definitely see how desperate Jezel is. She gives Jezel a friendly wink and reminds her that they're friends after all, which totally wins Jezel over. She jumps up to give Nadia a big hug, thanking her and saying she knew she could count on her. Nadia just smiles and pats her on the head like she's comforting a kid, telling her there's no need to worry. She keeps that calm smile on her face and promises Jezel that everything is going to be just fine. But as the hug continues, Nadia's expression turns pretty dark. She tells Jezel not to worry because she's going to be watching her every single step of the way. A horse carriage rolls through the streets as the day of the big decision finally arrives. Inside the carriage, Jezel is losing it and asks Nadia what she's planning, since she went ahead and told the whole school about their fight, even letting a crowd show up to watch, which has Jezel feeling pretty stressed. She says she wants to ban the audience right now because she thought this was supposed to be a private match. Nadia just gives a chill smile and says she wants everyone to see them win, but Jezel admits she wasn't looking to stand out that much. Nadia tells her that's not going to work because if they want to get ahead, they really have to show off their power. She explains that since Fran is the opponent and Adelaide is watching, beating the chairman's daughter is their best shot at taking control, making Jezel realize the weight of the situation. She sees that winning would wreck the Dumal family's influence while making her and Nadia's families way more powerful. She's actually pretty impressed and tells Nadia she can't believe she planned things out this far in advance. Nadia sounds completely sure of herself as she promises Jezel that they're definitely going to win this thing. The day of the event finally starts, and all the students gather at the massive iron gates leading into the hunting forest. Lou and Fran stand ready at the entrance, looking focused as they prepare to head inside for the match. Kelly suddenly pokes Lou hard in the back, making him jump and let out a surprised grunt. She looks pretty annoyed and tells him he's been nothing but a huge headache since he arrived at the school. Lou can only sweat and mumble her name, clearly realizing she's not in a good mood. She explains that she's the homeroom teacher for Jezel and Nadia's class, and she'll be the one watching the match for them. Right then, Jezel and Nadia finally show up, with Nadia giving a confident smile and apologizing to the group for making them wait. Nadia notices Lou standing there and asks if he's really the one serving as the new assistant teacher for the headmaster. She introduces herself as the student council vice chairman and mocks him, saying it's pretty brave of him not to run away when it's so obvious he's going to lose. Lou stays completely calm, asking if she's Nadia before warning her that talking that big is usually a bad idea, but Nadia doesn't like his tone at all. She calls him a cheeky commoner for being so casual and tells him he better learn how to address her properly. Lou doesn't back down for a second, simply telling her he might consider changing how he speaks if she actually manages to win, leaving Nadia laughing at his attitude. She points out he's still being disrespectful and reminds him that being an assistant won't save him. Nadia points a finger right at Lou and lays out a nasty bet. If he loses, he has to bow down and lick her shoes. Fran is absolutely furious and starts to snap back at the girl, but Lou reaches out to stop her before she gets too worked up. Lou looks totally unfazed as he tells Fran everything is fine, and she should just leave the whole situation to him. With the match set, Jezel and Nadia's team heads out first, with Jezel waving goodbye while sounding pretty confident. Lou turns to Fran and says they should get going too, and she immediately follows his lead. Fran looks at him later that day, asking if he's actually going to wear that same robe for the match tomorrow. It's finally the night before the battle, and while they're hanging out, Lou tells Fran her outfit really suits her. She just laughs and thanks him, but then Lou gets a bit of an awkward look on his face and asks her if she could take the robe off for a second. Fran completely loses it, asking if he really wants her to strip right then and there, but he just calmly says yes. Fran looks really shy as she starts pulling her clothes off for him. Lou stands there looking over the clothes, thinking about some specific part of the magic, while Fran yells out, completely caught off guard. She tries to calm herself down, thinking that since she's with Lou, it should be fine, but she still looks super flustered. She mumbles that she actually went and did it, feeling a bit shy about the whole thing. Lou doesn't even notice her reaction as he holds up her robe, saying it definitely needs some better defensive stats added to it. Fran just sits there on the bed, realizing the guy was literally only interested in her gear. She tells herself Lu isn't the type to try anything anyway, and Lu turns back to her, asking if he can put a strengthening enchantment on the robe. He really wants to make sure it protects her better, but Fran just looks at him, totally surprised by the idea of him doing an enchantment right there. Lu mentions he noticed she was wearing underwear under the robe after all, then quickly apologizes, asking if she's not into the idea. He starts blushing and looks away, admitting that what she's wearing actually looks really pretty, but he gets back to business. He tells her he's sorry she has to be cold for a minute, but he'll get the work finished up fast. Fran is still stuck in her head thinking about how embarrassing that was. She can't stop thinking about how she was basically naked right in front of Lu. But as she puts the robe back on, she starts to smile, feeling like Lu's kindness is coming right off the fabric, which makes her feel pretty great. Once they're back outside, Fran asks where they should head first. Lu agrees they should start by checking out the immediate area. Lu shuts his eyes to use his enemy detection. Right away, he senses multiple groups of goblins and orcs lurking nearby. He tells Fran that Jezel's team is currently at some ruins crawling with orcs, and there's another pack of 10 just 300 meters away from their spot. Lu decides he's going to be the one to lure them out. He gives her a confident look and tells her to just hang back and wait. The woods are full of orcs. These things are just mindless monsters that live to wreck stuff and eat people. Lu walks right up to one of the big ones and asks if it's the leader of the pack. He realizes pretty quickly that he's dealing with a high-ranked orc general, but he doesn't look worried at all. The whole pack starts screaming and loses it. They all start rushing Lu at the same time, ready to tear him apart. Lu moves through the pack like it's nothing, taking off heads before the monsters even realize he's moved. He faces down the leader and tells him he's just in the way of his plan to lure the herd, so he's going to have to die right now. Lu doesn't waste any time and connects with a brutal kick to the back of the general's neck. Fran spots the rest of the pack rushing in and calls out that they're coming, just as Lu leads them right into the trap. Lu yells for Fran to go ahead and use her magic, and she's ready to back him up. She starts her chant, calling for a holy fire from the heavens while a huge magic circle forms between her hands. She fires off a blazing bullet that rips through the front line of the monster. Seeing them get hit, Fran realizes it actually worked and figures one more solid hit will wrap this up. Lu follows up by dropping in from above to deliver a finishing strike to the last one standing. The fight ends quickly, and Lu just walks it off while telling Fran she did a solid job out there. Lu wipes a bit of blood off his face and mentions that she missed one of the enemies, so he had to finish it off himself. He tells her she needs to put in a bit more effort next time, and Fran yells back that she totally knows that already. Kelly watches from the side and sighs, saying this whole competition is basically just a joke. Fran is confused and asks what she means by that, but Kelly just asks if she really doesn't understand and offers to explain. Kelly points out that since Lu is supposed to be the next leader of the Arlv, that orc was never even a real threat to him. Hearing that, Fran just stands there completely stunned by the idea of Lu being the next Saul. Kelly is actually surprised she didn't know, especially with how much she likes the guy, which just makes Fran freak out even more. Fran tries to argue that Lu acts way different when it's just the two of them, but Kelly tells her to take it back and calls her Iron Mask. That gets a huge reaction out of Fran, who starts yelling and demands to know what that nickname is supposed to mean. Kelly just laughs and tells her it's what all the students call her behind her back, while Lu steps in to ask if they can stop fighting and finally get moving. Kelly looks at them and says they really don't get what the Saul is at all. She mentions they probably just see the position as a basic leader for the Arlv, which makes Fran argue that she heard the Saul is supposed to be this legendary magic user. Kelly snaps back that Fran is just using some generic description, and that's exactly her point. She decides she can't go into every single detail, but she'll give Fran a little bit of history to help her understand how the Arlv actually started all the way back in the era of the god. It's said that the apostles and spirits created by the god of the universe were gifted with incredible wisdom and power. So back when humans had just shown up and didn't know anything, the Arlv family were already around as descendants of the North Fairy tribe. Since they were kin of God, they spent their time hanging out with those powerful spirits and apostles, which let the Arlv pick up an insane amount of knowledge from that divine time. They've been using that ancient knowledge in all sorts of different ways ever since, and Kelly asks Fran what she would even think if she knew that was the real history behind her people. Fran starts thinking about all that power and knowledge passed down from the god era. She realizes what that implies and wonders if that means Lu can actually use all that stuff himself, but she still can't really believe that everything is so closely tied to apostles and spirit. Kelly tells her she's right on the money, because that would mean Lu basically has infinite power even though he's human. She adds that he also has a huge responsibility to pass everything down to the next Saul when the time comes, but Lu just gives a calm smile and says that even if it's not him, Kelly's older sister Ryu is more than good enough to handle the job. Meanwhile, over in the ancient ruins area, the place is crawling with ogres. They're basically like orcs but way worse, obsessed with eating people and packing 10 times the strength of a normal guy, making them total monsters in a fight. Jezel doesn't seem to care though, effortlessly slicing through 2 of them at once as Nadia cheers her on, saying that was awesome. Jezel just shrugs it off, saying that hunting things like goblins and orcs is basically nothing to her, and Nadia winks, agreeing that coming here was a smart move since these ogres are worth a ton of points. She mentions she did her homework on these monsters and the new area they've been hanging out in, which makes Jezel say she knew she could count on her. Nadia gets hyped to start their plan to wreck the enemies, and Jezel confirms it's the one where she plays shield, while Nadia uses magic to wipe them out. So Jezel starts moving, thinking to herself that being the vanguard is a total piece of cake. As they head toward a group of enemies, Jezel thinks about how she doesn't want the board chairman to think she's lagging behind in strength or sword skill. At the same time, Nadia worries that if she messes up, they could both get hurt. She knows that when things get close and personal in a fight, she really has to leave the heavy lifting to Jezel. Nadia looks off to the side, thinking about how she ended up being the number 2 student at the school before she even knew what was happening. She remembers how Jezel was always better at talking to people and always had the best grades in class, telling herself it was all because of Jezel that she felt humiliated every single day. She couldn't stand just being in the shadow of the girl standing right next to her. Nadia's goal is to be the absolute best at the academy, and she sees this competition as her one real shot to finally stand out. She's actually been playing a long game, setting a trap for Jezel by using her love for combat to make her lose all sense of fear and act on pure instinct. Nadia plans to use her friend like a piece on a chessboard so that when the dust settles, she'll be the only one left with high scores. She doesn't even care if Jezel breaks down, because then she can just step in and take over as the new student council president. Snapping back to the present, Nadia calls out to Jezel to let her have a turn at fighting the monsters. She runs straight toward a group of ogres, shouting for them to come at her while thinking that Jezel has already done enough work. Nadia calls on the wind and unleashes a massive tornado spell that completely wrecks the area. Adelaide is pretty hyped about the display she just saw, while Nadia stands there looking proud, saying their victory is basically in the bag now. Walking over to Adelaide to ask if she finally sees what they're capable of. Nadia is feeling pretty bold, wanting to know if the board chairman is impressed by their power. Adelaide calls the magic amazing and tells Nadia she wants a full explanation of that wind spell later, which catches Nadia completely off guard. She stammers out an answer as Adelaide tells them to just get back to it, since the competition is still going on. But Adelaide is secretly smiling for a different reason. She's thinking about how that magic isn't even in the school's curriculum, and it definitely isn't the usual spiritual type of magic either. She can't shake this weird feeling she's getting. And then she starts looking over at Jezel. She notices how much the girl has changed, going from being mature and hot-headed to treating Nadia almost like she's her mother and relying on her for everything. Adelaide catches herself though, realizing her own daughter acts the same way, and she probably shouldn't be talking about other people like that. But then, out of nowhere, Nadia just collapses and hits the dirt hard, leaving Jezel completely freaked out as she rushes over and screams out her friend's name. Jezel is totally losing it, holding her friend and asking what's wrong. She tries to get Nadia to wake up, while Adelaide comes running over, screaming both their names as she sees them on the ground. Adelaide drops down to check on them, realizing there's no enemy magic hitting them and no monsters nearby. She can't figure out what happened, but she knows she needs to get both girls to safety right away, except a creepy voice suddenly rings out, telling Adelaide that he can see her and knows her real name. The voice just keeps going, telling her she should become his servant while she stands there frozen. Far away, Lou feels this massive surge of magic. He can't believe it, wondering what just happened, and he starts moving. Fran sees him heading off and calls out his name since things are getting intense. A pack of ogres just spotted them and started coming out of the shadows, and it looks like some were hiding in the village too. Lou tells Fran he's going solo on this one, leaving her shocked. Lou gets this look on his face. He says he's got a really bad feeling that something is going down, and he knows he needs to wrap things up here as fast as possible. Fran looks pretty worried, asking what he means by having a bad feeling, but Lou doesn't wait around, just launching himself into the air while Fran yells after him. He drops right into the middle of the monsters, landing hard on the ground while they all turn to look at him. He stares them down and tells them he's the enemy they've been looking for. Suddenly, this massive Augur King shows up. It's huge, way bigger than the rest, and it's got crazy strength. It smashes the ground, sending rocks and dirt flying everywhere in a huge blast. Fran sees the explosion and screams Lou's name, thinking he's in serious trouble, but Lou just stands his ground. He tells the monster that if it only relies on raw strength to fight, it's not going to win. Lu stares the monsters down with a smirk. He tells them straight up they don't have a chance against him. He jumps right into the fight, landing a heavy blow that sends a shockwave through the area, and as the other monsters surround him, Lu looks back and says he really doesn't have time to play around, so he starts charging up his magic, telling the group he'll make their end as quick and painless as he can. He lets loose with his explosive Pyro Blade, a massive burst of fire and energy slashes that clears the whole field. Fran is completely floored by what she just saw. She can only manage to say how amazing it was while Kelly stands there shaking. She realizes he just pulled off multiple high-level spells and spirit magic in seconds. Fran rushes over to make sure he's okay, but Lu just acts like it was nothing and tells her he's fine. She asks him what that bad feeling was from before. He looks off into the distance and says it's a dark presence, explaining that he can feel Adelaide's magic starting to fade, so they need to hurry up and move. Fran shouts out for her mother, looking completely panicked as the situation with Adelaide sinks in, and she notices a new face, asking who's standing there while the little spirit girl gives a friendly wave. Lu introduces her as Vivi, an earth spirit, explaining they'll use her power to travel through the spirit world to reach Adelaide faster. Fran is blown away that such a thing is even possible, but Lu confirms Vivi will just shift their bodies for the shortcut. He grabs onto Fran and tells Kelly to meet up with them later, leaving Kelly totally stunned by the sudden move. Kelly tries to tell them to wait, but Lu ignores her and tells Fran to just hold on tight so they can leave. That's when Kelly snaps and grabs him, shouting that she's not joking and he needs to take her with them, explaining she's just as worried about Jezel, Nadia, and the chairman, and she's definitely not letting go. Realizing they don't have time to argue, Lu looks at Vivi and tells her to just get the magic started already, and Vivi locks in, focusing her power to shift the whole group into the spirit world instantly. Vivi's magic kicks in, and the group is pulled through a dark portal, landing on the other side with a jolt that makes Fran let out a surprised yell. Traveling through this space is pretty wild, and the two girls end up clinging onto Lu as hard as they can while the world blurs around them. They fly through a tunnel of light and jagged crystal shards, moving so fast that everything else becomes a total blur. Fran can't help but notice how beautiful the spirit world is, thinking to herself that she'd be totally hooked on the view if they weren't in such a mess. The group finally starts to slow down, dropping out of the sky and descending towards some ancient-looking ruins below. Once they're safely on the ground, Lu turns to the little earth spirit and gives her a quick thanks, telling her she's free to head back now that they've made it. Kelly looks around the empty area with a worried expression, saying that the chairman and everyone else really should be right here. But then the air gets thick. Kelly starts sweating, asking what this heavy, dark magic wave is, and Lu admits that even he can sense the bad vibes clearly. Kelly suddenly points toward the ruins and shouts for them to look, spotting a lone figure standing there and calling out Nadia's name. The woman just stands there with a creepy smirk on her face, and Lu starts wondering if that's the same girl he saw back at the school. Nadia stands there with a twisted look on her face, explaining that her physical body is just being used as a vessel for something else. Kelly is completely frozen in shock, barely managing to whisper Nadia's name as she stares at what her friend has become. Lu moves in and gets straight to the point, asking if she's just a demon who finished off and consumed Nadia. The creature seems impressed he figured it out so fast, admitting it was Nadia's own negative feelings that brought it here. It looks Lu up and down, mentioning his magic is actually pretty interesting for a human, so much that it wants his body too. Lu stares back with a serious look, knowing this thing is definitely not a force to be messed with. He starts thinking he needs to make sure Fran stays back, because if he messes up even a little, she could get caught in a crossfire. The demon catches on to his thoughts and mocks him, asking if he really thinks he can protect those girls, calling it impossible. Realizing the fight is about to start, Lu turns around and yells for Fran and Kelly to get back immediately. The demon strikes a pose and announces its true identity as Vine, the king of the underworld, telling Lu he's about to become a servant. Fran and Kelly are both frozen in place, looking completely horrified by what they're seeing. Things are getting real, and Lu stays right in front of them, while the demon-possessed Nadia stands in the ruin. He's ready to fight, but first Lu just glares at the thing with an intense look, clearly not a fan of what this monster is saying. The demon just smiles back and calls him a brat, asking what's wrong before bragging that it can read humans like a book. It claims that while normal names are just titles, everyone actually has a secret true name given to them by the creator, and since those true names are basically just souls, knowing one means the demon can completely control whoever it wants. It looks at Lu and tells him he's next on the list, saying he's going to become its servant along with both the girls. Lu doesn't even flinch, just repeating the idea of being a servant before telling the demon he's going to have to pass on that offer. The demon isn't listening though, saying humans can't fight its power as it forces its magic onto him to read his name. But then everything just goes quiet. There's no reaction at all, and the demon's eye goes wide when it realizes something is seriously wrong. The demon is losing its mind because it can't see anything, and it realizes that reading Lu's name is actually impossible, leaving it completely stuck while Lu just stands there with a smug look on his face. He casually asks what the problem is and starts mocking the monster, asking if it's finally going to show off that special secret technique it was bragging about. Lu brings up the move where it uncovers people's true names, calling it a totally unfair ability. Meanwhile, the demon is sweating bullets as its magic completely failed. The monster yells out in total shock when it realizes it's stuck. It can't move Nadia's body at all, and Lu explains that's because he's already got the thing locked down with restraint magic. He tells the demon that using his student as a vessel is just a burden, and he wants it out of her body right now. The demon just calls him an idiot, claiming it can bail on this body whenever it feels like it, and even threatens to jump into one of the girls passed out behind him. Lu doesn't seem worried at all, just walking forward and mentioning how demons are always so sneaky and unfair before asking why they're like that. The demon is shaking and can't even find the words to respond when Lu says he thought their kind was supposed to be virtuous, but then a massive, many-winged angel appears right behind him. Lu talks about how they were meant to leave humans and fight together, asking where that noble ambition went while he stands there looking more powerful than ever. Fran is completely frozen, her eyes wide with shock as she hears a voice she never expected to hear coming from Lu, who stands there looking cold and intent. The demon inside Nadia's body is losing its mind, unable to believe that such a terrifying presence is coming from a human kid. Before it can even react, Lu reaches out and grabs it by the chin, pinning it in place while the monster just stares in total disbelief. Lu demands to know where the demon hid the two women from earlier, making it very clear that if it touched them, he's going to rip its soul apart, staring right into the demon's eyes. He tells it that it won't be coming back from this, and its pathetic remains will be stuck drifting in a void for eternity. Moving on, Lu holds a girl's body and mentions that since Nadia needs time to heal, he's going to help Fran and Kelly first, then asks Lucifer to help him out. Lucifer gives him the go-ahead as Lu points out that the girls are literally on the verge of death and don't have much time left. The spirit explains that there is only one way to save people who've had their original names stolen by the creator, which is to use a special spell to change their true names, though it's not that simple since she needs them to give their consent first. Lu says he's got it, then starts focusing his energy to summon their souls back with his magic so they can finish the job. Lu stands there holding on to Nadia's body while he watches a dark shadow suddenly take off into the sky. The thing heads straight for some massive ancient ruins in the distance, and Lu realizes it's trying to escape. Lucifer wonders if they might have scared the guy a bit too much, but Lu just stares at the ruins, smiling a little as he tells the spirit that it's fine since they managed to get Nadia back, and he gives a quick thanks for the help. Somewhere else, Fran is drifting in a dark void, calling out Lu's name because she can't find him, but then his voice reaches her, telling her he's okay and that he's right there with her. Fran looks relieved as Lu tells her there's no reason to worry anymore and to just leave the rest to him. She gives a small nod, and then Lu explains that her soul should start feeling his magic waves any second now. He tells her to just trust him so she doesn't get lost in the dark, and Fran stays quiet, letting his power guide her. But just as she's focusing, a deep voice suddenly calls out to her from the shadows. Deep in the void, that mysterious voice tells Fran he's about to change the true name given to her by the creator, even though it totally breaks all the laws of the world. Fran looks back, wondering who this even is. While the voice asks her if she's really ready to face a taboo like this, she feels this weirdly kind energy coming from him and realizes it's not exactly Lu, but it feels like there are two of him. It all starts clicking for her, and she realizes that there really is another version of Lu sitting right there. Fran looks straight ahead with tears in her eyes and tells him she'll accept it, begging the spirit to lead the way. The voice seems pretty impressed that she figured out the bond between him and Lu, so he decides to grant her wish. Suddenly, her eyes snap wide open as she finally breaks out of the trance. She starts sitting up and looking around the ruins, and someone nearby notices she's finally awake. Fran sees Moraru and starts to say something, but the girl shushes her immediately, saying Lu is busy concentrating right now. It turns out Lu is right there holding on to Nadia, and Moraru explains that Fran was saved just like that too. Lu gives a relieved smile as he looks at Kelly, telling her he's just glad she's okay. The girl loses it and starts sobbing, lunging forward to wrap Lu in a massive hug while crying out his name. Watching the emotional scene, Moraru points out that her reacting like that actually makes a lot of sense, since Kelly was basically at death's door a second ago, and Fran was honestly in the same boat, looking totally dazed. Lu stands up and tells Moraru he's leaving the two of them in her care, and she promises to protect them with her life. Fran looks down, feeling a bit down because she wants to save her mother but knows she'd only slow Lu down. Hearing her thoughts, Lu tells her she needs to relax for a second. He gives her a confident look and promises he's definitely going to bring Jezel and Adelaide back safe. Fran watches him, looking pretty worried as she tells him to just make sure he stays safe. He tells them to leave it all to him and takes off instantly, heading out to finish the job. Deep inside the ancient ruins, Vine is completely losing it and can't believe what he's seeing. He's convinced the guy he's looking at should be trapped deep in the spirit world, so he figures it's just a trick. Lu calls out to Vine, standing his ground as the demon looms over him in the dark hallway. He starts tightening his gloves and tells Vine to fight him, demanding he give back Adelaide and Jezel right now. Vine just looks down at him like he's nothing, calling Lu a lowly human for even trying to step up. Sitting tall on his armored unicorn, Vine tells Lu not to get too ahead of himself, but Lu just stares him down and points out that the lion head is clearly his true form. Vine calls him a total fool and growls that he's not going to let this end the same way it did last time. He lets out a massive blast of energy, yelling that he won't let Lu trick him ever again. Lu catches some serious air to dodge the blast, but Vine isn't letting up. He screams that Lu isn't getting away. Lu holds his ground against a massive wave of energy, bracing himself as he realizes it's a mix of wind and water magic, wondering if the next hit is going to be even more intense. Vine just laughs from his mount, asking Lu if his little show is already over since he's back on the ground. The demon explains that the being from before was truly noble, and that's the only person he's ever called master. He starts losing it, yelling that he won't let some lowly human try to act like them. Vine swings his massive scythe and lets loose a huge whirlwind of power to finish things, but suddenly something strange appears in the air, making Lu stop and ask what's even happening. Vine stares in shock when he realizes his magic didn't even leave a scratch, and as the feathers drift down, he can't believe what he's seen. Lu stands there with 12 massive wings spread out, and Vine completely freaks out at the sight of Lucifer, while Lu just tells him to hand over the hostages. Lu gives a cold smile as his wings flare out, telling the demon that it's finally his turn to take over. He looks down at the demon's defense and points out that a high-pressure water wall is useless against him. Vine starts to freak out as ice begins to crack and spread everywhere, realizing that things are going bad fast. The demon can't believe the atmosphere is actually freezing his own wall, and he knows that aura is way too strong for him to handle. Lu calls for Eriton to grant him power, chanting about turning eternal sorrow into a frozen blade. He releases the spell Cositus, and the massive blast of ice completely shatters Vine, leaving him screaming in pain. Lu stands there with his 12 wings spread wide, but he starts to wonder if he's about to disappear for good, while Vine just looks up with wide eyes, whispering that it was an honor to see the true Lucifer. The demon lets out one last groan as the fight finally ends, and everything starts to go quiet. Lu looks at his own hand in disbelief, asking himself why he's even still alive after using all that energy.